in tonight's game.
Yeah, Matthew Liberatore says his goal is simply to win every time out. He gets the start tonight, also knowing that he's auditioning for a spot in the rotation next year.
We like trying to put some pressure on early, try to get this early run, get the lead to start this game. And that's going to get down, and the A's are going to get a 1-0 lead.
Not exactly the start you're looking for here, but time to turn the page.
The A's have first and third, 2 outs for the third baseman, Jordan Diaz, who is 0 for 8 so far in the series.
That's in the gap in right center field. That's going to find some grass and up against the wall. A 2-run double for Jordan Diaz. And the A's are off and running, leading 3-0.
For Shea Langoliers.
That's going to squirt fair past Goldschmidt. And the A's will pick up another run.
A decent amount of pitches in the first. You're going to feel that as you get deeper into that game in every aspect, from a fatigue, velo, all of it standpoint. But it's just part of development. If you're going to develop at this level, you're going to have ups and downs, and we go right back to work and see what the next outing looks like.
That's what it sounded like last night on both Bally Sports Midwest and the A's TV network, alongside Alex Ferrario and Grant Francis. I'm Brandon Kiley. Guys, it was a bad night for Matthew Liberatore. No other way around it. 4 1/3, 10 hits, 6 runs, 5 of them were earned, walked 3, struck out 5, ended up only going the 4 1/3 because the pitch count got so remarkably high, mostly due to the extended first inning. He said after the game, hey, listen, I got into some bad habits and I completely lost everything that I tried to get back in my last outing against the Rays. Alex, yesterday was a lot of what we had seen previously. Velo starts to dip pretty quickly. The curveball isn't landing for strikes. They're hitting him harder than what you would hope for. It just wasn't a good outing overall. The question, though, is what does it mean long term? Was it a one-off? Was that something where you look at it and you say, okay, well, clearly he can't repeat when he's able to go out there and give you a good start? How did you view yesterday's start for Matthew Liberatore?
So I viewed it as disappointing because, as T-Bone mentioned at the end of our show yesterday, the one thing you can't do is what happened against Oakland last night. You can't have him implode against a AAA team, essentially. But on the other side of that, for me, I look at it and say, throw him back out there. And Ollie said it right at the end of that cut post-game last night, saying this is the development stage of it. If you're going to develop at the big leagues, you're going to have bad games and you're going to have good games. Make the next one a good game. I'm throwing him back out there the next start. The part for me that I've just come to the conclusion with, and after his start last night, I said Dakota Hudson and Zach Thompson, to me, have leapfrogged Matthew Liberatore in terms of that depth competition after one start, but it's not one start. Like, it's one start against Oakland, but it's the inconsistency of it. It's 4 1/3 and 5 earned runs with 10 hits. And then he had the great start against Tampa, but then against Minnesota, it wasn't great. And then against Miami, it wasn't great. Like, he's been inconsistent. And the one thing I can say about Dakota Hudson, at least in his last 3 starts, he's been consistent. The one thing I can say about Zach Thompson, the last 2 times that he's given them 4+ innings, he's been consistent. And unfortunately, Liberatore has not been. So I wanted to see him pound the strike zone. Unfortunately, that really wasn't working for him last night. I wanted to see that swing and miss stuff. It came in later. But Matthew Liberatore, to me, dipped back a little bit after that start in terms of I'd like to see more of Dakota Hudson and Zach Thompson.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. I want to hear from you guys today. By the way, the YouTube chat is open and available. You can always watch us on YouTube at 101 ESPN STL. That's where you find the live stream. Yesterday, Matthew Liberatore was asked after the game what went wrong for him. Here's what he had to say post-game.
I think that might have been the catalyst for reverting to some of those old habits a little bit. Long first inning, get a little fatigued, and those bad habits kind of kick back in. That's something that we're still working through and something I intend on cleaning up.
And here was what Ollie Marmol had to say after the game on what the Cardinals can do to make sure that Matthew Liberatore gets a little bit more of that repeatability in his delivery.
There's no guarantee there. That's the whole thing about being a big leaguer. Like, you have to show that you have the ability to do that. You get opportunities to show that, and that's all you can do. So you put a program together, you follow it, you make adjustments along the way, and you grant him the opportunity to show what he's capable of doing. Then he has to show what he's capable of doing.
I'm a little more hesitant to make anything declarative today, Alex, than you are. I think that Matthew Liberatore yesterday, what you saw is kind of how development tends to look at the big league level. I tend to agree there with Ollie. Progress is not linear. We want it to be. We would love for it to be like you go from point A to point B and it's a straight line in between. But what it really is it's a lot of ups and downs and peaks and valleys in between, right? You see Jordan Walker at the beginning of the season goes off to this miraculous start where he's getting this crazy hitting streak, and then he goes down to the minor leagues because he's on the ground too often. He comes back up, he's super hot early on, and you have these issues defensively that exist for him. I feel like lately he had been so much better defensively. And then last night happens where he's got that bad error in right field. There's ups and downs, peaks and valleys in this development of young players at the big league level. We saw it last year with Nolan Gorman as well. I think that's what we're seeing right now with Matthew Liberatore. He had an incredible outing against the Tampa Bay Rays. And the reason why I said it then, the reason why I will reiterate it today, is because that is what you're hoping for. You hope that something like that can unlock the future of him. But the other thing, what it serves as a fan, is that you now know he's capable of that. And so you're going to hold him to that standard afterwards, but we shouldn't. We should just revert back to, okay, he has that in his bag. Now let's hope that he can find some sort of consistency with it. The reason why Jack Flaherty became so maddening this year is because he's no longer a young player. Now he's in the final year of his contract. He's hitting free agency. He's going to be really expensive very soon. If he didn't have the same if Jack Flaherty's inconsistencies this year were him as a rookie and not as like a sixth-year player, I'd be like, hey, Jack Flaherty might be able to turn this thing around. We might have something here. That's basically where Matthew Liberatore is right now. One outing, pretty good. The next outing, really bad. The next outing, amazing. The best we've seen from him. And then yesterday was terrible. It was just a really bad outing against a really horrendous lineup. And you just hope that the next time out, he gets something a little better for you.
And by no means am I here saying like I'm done with Matthew Liberatore and I don't want to see him again. No, I want to see him every fifth day from here until the end of the season, because I hope what you said is true. I hope that he goes back to being the Tampa Bay guys. And if what Matthew said after the game is how he truly felt, okay, well then you know what those bad habits are and you get them out of your system. And Ollie was the one that basically told him, which I think was the right move. You're not going back down. We're not shipping you out. You're not going to become a bullpen arm. You're a starter in this rotation the rest of the way. So figure out whatever you need to be consistent for us. It's just right now, because of the inconsistency with Matthew Liberatore, and I get that that's one start, but we just know he's a guy that's going to give up a lot of runs if the strikeouts aren't there, and the strikeouts weren't there until late last night. I'm more inclined to see a bright light with Dakota Hudson and Zach Thompson as potential starters for this team next year. And look, all of this too with a grain of salt. I don't expect any of these guys to be a starter next season for the Cardinals. Frankly, Matthew Liberatore should be a number one in AAA next season. The same can be said about Zach Thompson, potentially in your bullpen. The same can be said about Dakota Hudson. But that did give me a little bit more of, okay, let's see a little bit more of Dakota Hudson and Zach Thompson.
So we got a couple of texts that I want to respond to. We'll get to John Denton coming up here in just about 5 minutes or so from the 314. Guys, the Rays game was a fluke. Last game's what's real for Matthew Liberatore. Nothing about the Rays game was a fluke, though. The reason why I say that is because there were clear, tangible changes. Sometimes with a hitter, Alex, guy just goes on a hot streak. There's nothing that has changed with his approach. He's hitting the same exit velocity, the same launch angle. Everything about the swing looks the same. But for 1 month, the results are there. And then the next month, he looks like he's gone cold. Well, what's different? The results. That's it. Nothing about the process has changed at all. We've heard Adam Wainwright talk about that. In the past, he's had people come up to him and ask him, hey, what changed? And he'll say, nothing. Some of those balls that dropped as hits previously are now getting caught behind him. Yeah. Same thing is true for a hitter. With Matthew Liberatore, there were changes. He had changed his velocity. His velocity, instead of dipping like it did last night, where in the fourth inning and the third inning, he was averaging 92 miles per hour. The previous outing, he was averaging 94.5 miles per hour at that point in the game. That is a massive change for him late as he gets into a ball game. The other thing is, against the Rays, he was landing his curveball for strikes. Yep. Yesterday, he was not. Those are two very real changes that took place for Matthew Liberatore against the Rays that did not happen last night. Now, the question, if you think that was a quote-unquote fluke, I'll disagree with you. But the problem is, why can't that be repeated? Why can't he go out there against the A's and throw the same velocity in the third and fourth innings as he did against the Rays? Why can't he go out there against the A's and have the same curveball landing for a strike as he did against the Rays? That's what they have to get figured out. That's where you have to figure out what can we do between starts to make that more likely. And that's what they're trying to accomplish right now inside of that clubhouse. But that is the push and pull of development. That is what you're trying to find, is what led to that start against Tampa Bay, and how did we get away from that today or yesterday against the A's?
And my only question to that would be, at what point do you say maybe it's just not in the bag? And it's hard to say that now because he's so young and you haven't got that proper sample size. But at some point when he goes out there start after start after start and it's just not working, and then you get that one that is working, at what point do you say, you know what, we might need to find a way to utilize him in a better position?
Next year. The rest of
and that's why I'm starting him every fifth day from now until the end of the 100%. Season.
And that's my firm stance on him, is Matthew Liberatore should get a start every fifth day for the Cardinals right now. And then at the end of the year, you regroup and find out where you're at.
Yeah.
What did the changes look like? How did his delivery go? Was he finding some repeatability there? Was he landing his curveball for strikes? Did he keep the velocity up later in games more often? Maybe it's not every start, more often though. That's what you're looking for the rest of the way with Matthew Liberatore. We'll ask John Denton, Cardinals insider for MLB.com, what he saw from Matthew Liberatore last night, how the Cardinals can get him back on track for the next start, and another big start this evening for Adam Wainwright. What does it mean in the big picture? We'll ask John Denton next year on 101 ESPN. Alex Ferrario, that's Grant Francis. I'm Brandon Kiley. We're happy to go out to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by the expert on the Cardinals. He's John Denton, Cardinals insider for MLB.com. You can follow him on Twitter at John Denton555. John, we appreciate the time as always, my friend. Let's start out with last night's performance by Matthew Liberatore. Rough outing coming off of what was his best start in his Cardinals career. What was different this time around for him?
Yeah, BK, last week when I came on from St. Pete, I told you that it was all about velocity. You got to watch velocity with him. And, against the Rays last week, it was 95, 96. I think he was up to 94, 94.3 with his four-seamer. His sinker was at 95 last week. He had the best outing of his career. And then last night you looked, the velocity on the sinker was 92.9, like it's down again. And, Ali Marmol said after the game, and some of the guys said, this is a young guy. There's going to be ups. There's going to be downs. But that was a step back last night. Last night was really important to see how he was going to follow that up. And, Liberatore was pretty upset after the game. And it was very disappointing because you want a young guy like that to build off a great effort. And, that was a step back. That was an A's team that's hitting. They have the second worst batting average in franchise history. They came in at 222, and they really knocked him around in the first inning. So that was a step back, and it was disappointing to see him unable to build on that good outing last week in Tampa.
John, at what point, and I'm going to preface this by saying I understand he is still young and hasn't even pitched 100 innings in the majors yet, but at what point do you feel like the optimism starts to dwindle for the Cardinals with Liberatore?
Well, Alex, you have to remind yourself he's 23 years old, and there are going to be ups and downs, and there are going to be, surges where he looks great, and there are going to be times when he takes a step back, and the fact that he's 23, he's going to get a little more latitude. But the Cardinals have really turned the screws up on him lately. They have got him to step up his workout routine. They have him watching more film than ever. He said he had a great week. He got in a bunch of good workouts. He's doing film work with Dusty every day to try to be more efficient in his mechanics, to try to get everything out of his body. But, they want him to be, he's one of those guys who can't put on weight. They want him to add muscle. They want him to add bulk. They want him to be a guy who can sustain it and throw just as hard in the fifth inning as he is in the first inning. And, there's been a little bit of push and pull there, but they've really turned the screws up on him. And, they thought he made a stride in Tampa. He pitched the best outing of his career. He said he'd never finished an eighth inning ever at any level before. And then, last night to be a step back was disappointing. But, they're going to stay on him. They feel like he can be a reliable starter in the future. He's just got to be stronger. He's got to be more efficient with his mechanics. He can't fall back into those bad habits like he did last night.
We're talking to John Denton here on 101 ESPN. You can find his work at Cardinals.com. John, the other thing that came out of last night's game, unfortunately, was Lars Nootbaar and Tommy Edman both leaving the game due to apparent injuries. This is with the backdrop of Nolan Gorman still nursing his back, and then Wilson Contreras, who they say is probably going to be available at this point, but he had the hip issue as well. That's a whole lot of position players that are potentially hurting at a minimum and injured at worst. What do you think that means going into today's game? Are you anticipating some roster moves?
I think we could see a roster move, BK. That the Lars was in a lot of pain.
We'll try to get John Denton back on the line. I can imagine
he could have ended it with Lars Nootbaar was in a lot of pain.
I was in a lot of pain watching Lars Nootbaar at that point in time. Alex, we'll mention this a little bit more later on today. Anytime that specific injury takes place, I just cringe. I sit at home and I say to myself, please don't be the Yadier Molina injury. Please don't be the Yadier Molina injury. Please don't be the Yadier Molina
testy,
injury.
Yeah. That'll take the...
You have a very different perspective on this, and I think that you're a crazy person for it.
I am, and maybe... I feel bad saying it out loud now, but when it happened, the only thing I could do was laugh. Because, first of all, he's grimacing in pain, and I understand that. Like, I've never taken something
You're a 2-year-old, you know that?
Yeah, I know, but I've never taken anything that fast off that area, so I can understand the pain that he's in. But there's repercussions that come with it in terms of every broadcast team trying to come up with a different term to explain where he got hit, which always gives us some fun nuggets. And then, well, fun nuggets. You're welcome for that pun. But then the other one, I told you guys this too. I live with a 2-year-old, and a 2-year-old thinks pain is funny in my house, and so I've been stepped on there a couple of times, so I can understand the pain.
It's not funny.
No,
it's not funny at all.
It's not funny, but when you're watching it, it's a little humorous.
All right, John, we've got you back on the line. You said that Lars Nootbaar was in pain, which I can understand. What was going from there?
Yeah. I wouldn't be shocked if Lars doesn't end up on the IL. That was quite a shot he took. Tried to stay in the game. He took another swing and struck out and missed, and he tried to make it through the next half inning and ended up having to leave the game. So I would not be surprised at all if Lars doesn't end up on the injured list. The good news with Tommy is he had an X-ray. There was no fracture. Tommy will probably miss a day, but there's a good chance they could get Nolan Gorman back today. Nolan made a lot of progress yesterday. The back is feeling better. I think Contreras will catch tonight. The hip, he's kind of beyond the hip thing. So I think they'll get those two guys back, but I highly doubt that Lars or Tommy will be in the lineup tonight.
So that would signify going after an outfielder potentially if you're bringing somebody up, John. Is there one guy that you would lean more towards than the other of potentially getting a recall?
Palacios time, baby.
Yeah. Juan Yepez had a big night last night. We all know Juan Yepez has got several shots at this thing. They scored 2 runs in the playoffs last October, and they both came off of Juan Yepez's bat. So Juan Yepez believes in his ability. Juan Yepez thinks he should be in the major leagues right now. I know his father thinks the same thing. I think he could be the guy to get the call.
Do the Cardinals still have a plan with Juan Yepez, John? Like, is he still in their plans for 2024?
It's debatable. Finding a position for Juan has always been difficult. There's no doubt that he can hit at this level. Are they comfortable playing him in the outfield? Are they comfortable using him as a right fielder or left fielder? Is he a first baseman? Is he a DH? Is he, they even stuck him at third one time last year. Juan's got to find a position where he can fit in, and the numbers just do not favor him right now. When Jordan Walker made the team, that pretty much was the kiss of death for Juan making the club, and there are other guys. Maybe Lucan Baker's passed him with the way he's hit the ball in AAA this year. So Juan is kind of falling down the pecking order, and he may be one of those guys who needs a fresh start in a new organization, which I wouldn't be shocked if that doesn't happen, if he doesn't have a spot on the roster next season.
John, there's 2 final things that I wanted to get to with you. The first was the news yesterday with Ryan Helsley getting shut down from his rehab stint, or having that kind of pushed back a little bit again. What is the latest with him? Do you think we're going to see him pitch again for the Cardinals in 2023?
BK, it kind of gets to the point now where kind of wonder if it's good to pitch him, because there's nothing on the line. I know Ryan wants to pitch again. He wants to feel comfortable, going into the off season, that he's healthy. It's weird. Ryan said that when he was pitching, he totally felt fine. It was between starts every time he was having these twinges of pain in his forearm. He's having tightness, and that's been an issue. And he had it 5 years ago, and he felt like he came back too early and damaged it. This time he feels fine when he's pitching. His velo is up there, but there's pain in between. He did have an MRI yesterday. The initial results were that everything was structurally sound, but they've got to find out why he can't recover in between starts. And
Let's try one more time. I've got one last question for John Dan. If we can get him back on for literally,
make him come back on for one more freaking question.
I want to hear what he has to say about Waino. But Alex, we're going to get into this again a little bit later on today with Ryan Helsley. I agree with Denton. I don't think that it's worth pushing it at this point. You're not playing for anything meaningful. We know what if this was a young guy where you were trying to learn something about him and you're like, hey, we've got this rare opportunity right now to be able to actually learn something about this player. Sure, maybe then you push it, you try to find out what you can get out of him, either at the big league level or down in the Arizona Fall League. You know what Ryan Helsley is at his best. Yeah. And now it's about getting him healthy. That's always been the concern with him.
Well, and the thing with that, too, is if you're going to shut him down, which I do believe and agree you should, bring somebody up that you want to find out about. Don't bring up another guy that you don't care about.
Well, we're not getting into that right now. All right, John, final question for you. We'll get you out of here on this. I know you're a very busy man today. Adam Wainwright, big start for him tonight against the New York Mets. He made some comments yesterday. Hey, I'm not going to go out there and quit. I would expect that to be his mindset going into this one. However, the real question that matters is, what do the Cardinals think about his future in the rotation? How important is this start for Waino, I guess, is the best way to frame this question, John.
Yeah, this is huge, BK, tonight. You know, it's weird to think that this could potentially be the last time Adam Wainwright starts a game at Busch Stadium. You know, it's bizarre to think about that. Anybody who knows what Wainwright's meant to this organization is pulling for him tonight and hopes it goes well. But they can't keep trotting him out there if he's going to give up 8 runs and, only get 3 outs. He gave up 7 runs against Colorado. He gave up 8 runs against Kansas City. He knows he has to be better. And, this has not gone well, but this is the way it normally goes, BK. I mean, Bob Gibson got pushed to the bullpen at the end of his Cardinal career. I mean, we all remember Willie Mays staggering around in center field and Michael Jordan wearing a Wizards jersey and, Tom Brady throwing interceptions in the playoffs. Like last year, what Albert Pujols did was uncommon. And, I have a newsletter coming out. It'll be out soon. Waino said that he benefited from seeing how Albert handled last year.
And that'll do it.
Poor JD.
I'll text John off air. We appreciate his time as always. John Denton joining us here on 101 ESPN. I got the gist of it there. Huge day for Adam Wainwright. By the way, find his work. He was mentioning his newsletter that's going to come out later today. That is always posted at cardinals.com as well. You can also find him on Twitter at John Denton 555. Alex, I am very curious to see what tonight looks like for Adam Wainwright.
Yeah.
He needs, it doesn't even have to be a great start, just a fine one. If he could go 5 innings and give up 3 earned runs, he makes his next start. Full stop. That's it. Somebody on the text line said, guys, why can't they just leave Waino into the rotation? They're not playing for anything meaningful at this point anyways. And the reason why is because he's not giving you competitive outings. He is completely leaving the bullpen out to dry right now. Like you have a question going into tonight's game if Adam Wainwright's going to get out of 2 innings. Can he give you 6 outs? And you just can't position yourself that way, man, because you now have to manage 4 Waino's starts the day before he starts the game. Yesterday, to be able to get, 4 2/3 innings out of Casey Lawrence, hey, I made a whole lot of jokes when he came up. Good work by him yesterday to be able to save your bullpen. Because if he didn't do that and you had to wear out a couple of guys in that outing, you could have a really big issue going into tonight's game with Waino on the mound.
Yeah, and I think everybody in St. Louis and frankly in baseball are rooting for this one to be better for Waino because you just hate to see somebody go out the way that it would go out if this struggles for him. But he's got the optimism. He's got the positive mindset. I don't think you're going to change Adam Wainwright's mind, even if he gives up 10 runs in the first inning and can't get through it tonight. I think Waino's still going to believe he's got enough to get in the tank because, frankly, you have to have that if you want to finish the season.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Grant Francis, I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up next, what is the better route for the Blues to take at this year's deadline? We'll talk about that here at 101 ESPN.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Last night, Matthew Liberatore got lit up against Oakland in the series finale. Cardinals fall 8-0 to the Athletics. They'll start a new series tonight, a 4-game set against the Mets. Jose Quintana, the former Cardinal, on the mound for the Mets, who has a 3.03 ERA so far this season. Adam Wainwright for the Cardinals. First pitch will be at 6:15. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been driven by Johnny Londoff. Find new roads and shop 24/7 at Londoff.com and LondoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
So T-Bone's cheating on us this week. No other way to put it, really.
Unbelievable.
He's on the fast lane today. That's why he's not. And if you're wondering why the wonderful Grant Francis is joining us today here on the show, it's because Tanner Hendrickson got the call up to the big leagues. He's big-timing us. Alex, I had to podcast our show yesterday. T-Bone was so busy after the show.
Feel like?
He was in there eating his lunch.
Oh, my gosh.
As I am podcasting our show. He's like, hey, I got some stuff to do. I'm co-hosting the Fast Lane today.
Frankly, I would say that's just a little bit of weak sauce because you and I have co-hosted the Fast Lane and we've gone straight through
100%.
From our show to the Fast Lane.
We walked uphill both ways to the Fast Lane studio.
Back in my day, I had to do it barefoot.
Now think about that for a second.
Hey, I'm always here for you guys.
Thank you, Grant.
Backup board operator.
That's right.
Whoa.
He calls himself.
It's not Alex's
number 2
words.
on the depth chart, but number 1 in our hearts.
Yeah,
all right?
technically, Matt Rocchio called him a backup board op.
So the reason why I bring that up is because yesterday he also stole one of our segments. Now it's been on our rundown roughly 27 times over the last week.
He's gonna act like that was his idea.
Exactly. So he also misinterpreted it. He stated it yesterday.
Just swipe the legs out from under him.
At the trade deadline, would you rather see the Blues go for it and get into the playoffs, or would you rather see them sell? Well, Alex, I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say I would rather see them go for it and get into the playoffs.
Would you want to see them win?
Yeah.
Get the hell out of
here. That's my personal
opinion. Have you seen what the Cardinals are doing right now? Top 5 pick.
What I really think the question is, though, is if the Blues are a few games out of it, and it's looking unlikely that they're going to make the playoffs, but there's still a chance. They're not mathematically out of it by any stretch. Do you hold your assets? Do you try to go for it at that point if there's no guarantee that you're getting in? Or do you sell them off and kind of do that soft retool kind of thing at the deadline again before really going for it again in the offseason? Here's what Jamie Rivers had to say about that potential possibility at the deadline.
And I can guarantee you that conversation last year between Army and the ownership group of, hey, we're going to be sellers at the deadline, and that means we're probably not going to make the playoffs. I can't imagine that was a very... So if you're going to be a team that's kind of battling for that wild card, if I'm Army, I go out and I acquire a player, kind of Cardinals style. Go acquire a guy that you're really not going to have past this year, an older guy, a veteran guy, or somebody that you can add at the deadline to get your team into the playoffs. This team here, from a revenue standpoint, is up against the cap every year. Tom Stillman and his group do a great job of keeping the team right there. They need some playoff gates. They need those playoff gates, and Army owes it to the ownership group, and he owes it to the fans to put this team in the playoffs next year, or at least go down swinging.
Jamie's a genius. He should be an everyday color analyst for the Valley Sports Midwest for the Blues.
I've got some good news for you.
What?
That is exactly what was announced yesterday.
When did this happen?
Yesterday.
Oh, congratulations to him. No,
don't get fired.
Yeah, I almost did there. The F word came out, but I saved it. It's fine. It's just the 2 vowels at the end of my name. Look, Jamie nailed it. And I would even go one further than what Jamie said because he's right. You do owe it to the ownership group that pays to the salary cap every season to get to the playoffs, but it is dire to the development of your team to get into the playoffs this year because, frankly, the cornerstone pieces that you're building around, specifically Jordan Kyrou, all he's known as kind of playoff failures or not playoffs. And that's not a good thing to have for a cornerstone piece. I remember I think it was Marty St. Louis that said it with the Montreal Canadiens that talked about why they kept Jake Allen and gave him a contract extension. And he said, it's because you have to have the culture of winning around a young group of players if you want to have success in this league. And if you don't believe me, go look at the Arizona Coyotes. The Arizona Coyotes have just known sell at the deadline, sell at the deadline, sell at the deadline. Now they want to compete. They don't have a taste of what competition is. Fast forward to the LA Kings, who had to go through 3 really bad years, and then they got into the first round of the playoffs, and they lost. They got shellacked. The next year, they got into the playoffs last year, and they lost 4-2 to the Oilers. That's development. And for this team, for guys like Kyrou, for guys like Thomas, who I know has already tasted the top with the Stanley Cup, but that was as a secondary piece. Now he's the primary piece. Guys like Jake Neighbors, guys like Zachary Bolduc that'll be in the minors, Zachary Dean. You want to have a taste of what competition in the playoffs feel like. You got to have that failure in the playoffs a couple of times to continue that drive rather than this, well, we're not good enough, so let's just sell it off. And you're not going to go anywhere in that sense.
So I'll play the other side. Tyler Bertuzzi last year was traded for a conditional first-round pick. Now, Bertuzzi is a very specific style of player. He's got that grit to his game. So maybe it's a little different. But if you get a good season this year out of one of Kapanen, Blais, or Vrana, you could potentially get not a first-round pick. I think that's very unlikely. But like a second or a third-round pick is, I guess, potentially there for one of those players. And if that's on the table for you, and you're unlikely to make the playoffs, still possible, unlikely to make the playoffs, the math is against you. I could see a scenario where they say to themselves, we're not doing a full-blown sell-off. This is not what last year was, where you're trading O'Reilly, and you're trading Vladdy, and you're trading basically every depth piece that's currently on the roster. Maybe we trade one or two of these guys. We trade Blais. We trade Vrana. And we know that those guys aren't going to be back in 2024, so we get that draft pick, and then you go into the offseason, and you hope that you could trade it for proven pieces, or you include it in a package with one of your prospects for a proven defenseman, right? Something like that. I could even see them flipping an asset, so trading a guy like a Vrana, let's say he's got 25 goals at the trade deadline, and he's having just this miraculous season from a goal-scoring situation, and Carolina, shocker, needs somebody to score goals for them in the postseason. They say, you know what, that's the guy, we're going to give you a second-round pick for him, something like that. And then they flip that second-round pick along with the prospects to go get Noah Hanifin, because they think that Noah Hanifin can be a guy that helps them not only this year, but in 2024 and beyond, and they're going to re-sign him long-term. Similar to what Boston did with, what's-his-face, the defenseman 2 years ago, where they signed, or they traded for him at the deadline.
Hampus Lindholm.
And then they re-signed him long-term. I could see the Blues doing something like that, where it's not a full-blown sell-off, but it is something where it just makes sense for them long-term.
Buy and sell. Yeah. And we talked about the Cardinals potentially doing that this year at the deadline if they wouldn't have just completely collapsed going into it. But I absolutely can see a scenario. I think the conversations begin with what's Sammy Blais. I wouldn't trade because, frankly, for $1 million, and if he's playing well, I think you keep him. At best, you're probably going to get a third pick for him, and I think you're better off having him. Maybe trying to keep him,
because teams value that type of player.
They do
for the playoffs. But so if he's having a really good season, and you don't think you're going to be able to re-sign him because now he's going to be a $3 million player
like
for
a
2024 instead of a $1 million player, I could see where then it makes a value add.
The question there, though, would be: would Sammy Blais consider coming back for cheap in St. Louis?
And it's possible.
Yeah, I'm going to have that conversation with all three guys. But if you're in contention for a wild card spot and Verana's having an unreal season and somebody comes to you and says, hey, we got a first-round pick, we want Vrana. Depending on what my assets are doing elsewhere of Dean and Bolduc, I'll flip them. Because if I can get a first-round pick for him and still be competitive, I'll consider that. Because a first-round pick could do something for me either at the deadline or in the offseason in terms of making my team better. But I would have to have the conversation with the player first, because if there's a shot that I can have him and I'm competitive, I'm going to keep him. Because a first-round pick where, let's say you trade Vrana to a team that's top 3 in their division, that's going to be a 25th overall pick. And although that player might be good for you 4 or 5 years from now, I'd much rather keep Vrana for a potential playoff run and then take the benefits of having that playoff run under my skin for all of those players that I had on my roster.
Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. And, like, if there's a very, like, if you have a 60% chance of making the playoffs, none of this is what we're talking about really matters, because then they're going to go for it. They're going to try to make the playoffs this year. They won't go all in, but they'll give themselves the best opportunity to make it in, because those gate receipts really matter for the St. Louis Blues. The money, the revenue, like forgetting, just setting aside for a moment, and this also matters, but the winning pedigree and all that stuff, that's really nice. The money is what really matters to the organization, because they make significant revenue off of those gates. Somebody on the text line from the 217 says, guys, are you bleeping serious? How can we talk Blues and trade deadline 45 days before the season even begins? Because I think it's important to set up expectations of where this team is, where they're heading, and what the mentality should be, not from the players on the team. They're always going to go into every game trying to win, or the coaches, same thing, from the front office. How do they view this season? Is this an all-in year? I think we all agree no. Is this a year where you can make the playoffs, though? Yes. Because as I look to last year and I think about it, I asked you guys this question before the show today. How many players on last year's Blues team outperformed expectations? And I'm not talking about the guys they got at the deadline, because every one of them did. Players that were on the team on opening night, how many of them outperformed what you thought they could do last season? Is there one? Like, if I set the over-under at 0.5, can you name one player last year that clearly outperformed what you expected out of them?
I'd say maybe Pavel Buchnevich was the only one, but I mean, even for him, it wasn't above and beyond what was expected of him. I'd say he reached expectations, but I wouldn't say he outperformed his expectations.
Alex, do you have somebody?
I do. People are going to hate me for this. Binnington would be the one that I'd put on this. I mean, the numbers don't back it up, but take Jordan Binnington's regular season's performance in terms of the individual from 2 years ago to last season and tell me that goaltender did not improve in the regular season. He did.
Better, yeah.
He did. The defense was awful, but he improved. So he would be the one that outperformed my expectations, because I expected him to lose his job like he did to Husso. But other than him, there is not one person I can hear an argument for that outperformed their expectations.
It's kind of wild, right? Like,
yeah.
The reason why I bring this up is because I don't think that's going to happen again. Now, I'm not saying all of them are going to outperform expectations, but typically you get somebody. Like, you look at the Cardinals this season. Brendan Donovan outperformed my expectations. Lars Nootbaar, I would say, for a casual observer, probably outperformed what your expectations were of him this season. So even in a terrible season for the Cardinals, you can point to guys. Nolan Gorman maybe outperformed expectations compared to what he did last year. On a horrible team, in the worst season for the franchise in 15 years and probably even beyond that, they had a few guys outperform what you thought they could do.
Yep.
The Blues last year had none. Because even with Pavel Buchnevich, man, the dude missed 20 games because of infections that were in his foot. And yes, while he was a very good player, I expected him to be the best player on the team going into last year. I don't think there was a single guy for me that significantly outperformed what I thought they were capable of going into last year. And this year, I do believe, my bold take, somebody's going to surprise us.
Yep.
I don't know right now who that's going to be. It might be Sammy Blais, who we just talked about. It could be Vrana. It could be Kapanen. Maybe Robert Thomas goes out there this year and is like, oh, this is the guy we've been waiting for.
Mm-hmm.
Number one center, good in all situations, puts up 20 goals, 75 to 80 points by the end of the year. All right, this is the guy that we were waiting for. Hell, Kevin Hayes, who they just added,
absolutely
could totally come in and surprise all of us because he's a consistent 50-point producer.
And you got to bring up the defenseman, too. Like, every defenseman on this team had a historically bad season for themselves individually. Do you really expect all 6, maybe 8 guys that are on this team to be as bad, if not worse, than what they were last year? I just don't. So if one of them outperforms what they did last year, you're talking about a significant increase. So that's the problem.
That was my thought process with it, was I don't even think you need a lot of players, or really any players, to outperform their expectations. I think they just need to get back to what their career average is. Just get back to the player that you've been for the majority of your career. Because last season, you can't say that about really any of the Blues players.
If you get 2, I'm serious, 2 of your defensemen to play at their career norms, everything changes about the outlook of the team for 2023.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if Justin Falk is just not even a Norris Trophy candidate or anything like that, but an above-average second-pairing defenseman, and if the same thing is true for one of Parayko or Torrey Krug, man, we're going into this season and we're like, okay, I could see how this thing kind of comes together. Yep. That doesn't mean that you're a Stanley Cup contender, but it could put you into the conversation of, all right, the Blues are a top six to seven team in the Western Conference.
And
now.
that's progress from what you were last year.
And now you look at it going into 2024, and you're like, all right, we're building around these two defensemen. We know what our front top six-ish looks like for us. We've got these young guys that are on the way. Now let's go make the big ad.
Yep.
And you know where you need it. Maybe it's on the defensive core to get that number one top pairing defenseman. Maybe it's a number one center. Maybe it's a top pairing wing. Like, it just allows you to have a little more flexibility going into the offseason. You need two of those top four defensemen to really play up to expectations. Not exceed them, play up to them. Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers here on 101 ESPN. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers. By the way, if you haven't checked us out yet, go ahead and check us out on YouTube. At 101 ESPN STL is where you can go to find it. Let's start with this from the 636. Guys, what do you think is the best possible outcome for Vrana and Kapanen this season? What is their ceiling in 2023 with the Blues?
Vrana, I would say ceiling. Is it like realistic ceiling or like unrealistic ceiling?
Hey man, if they can attain it, that would be their ceiling.
30 goals for me, for Vrana.
For Vrana, see, I would say 35 to 40 goals. I mean, Kevin Allen, who covers the team in Detroit, who saw Vrana when he was acquired from Washington all the way until he was traded away, said we all entered each season predicting 40-plus goals from Jakub Vrana. And if he's playing top six role, which I fully anticipate him to, I would say 35 to 40 goals for him, which seems insane, but
over the last 2 seasons, in 51 games, he scored 25 goals. So that is a pace of about 35-ish.
Yeah.
So
and for Kapanen, I think Kapanen, let's not forget, this guy was a first-round draft pick back in 2014. He was utilized as a fourth-line player.
We know if you're a first-round pick, that means you're going to be good in the NHL.
Really? You're going to bring Logan Brown back up and throw him in my face. Throw him in my face. What about Tage Thompson? You want to throw that one in my face?
That one worked out.
He worked out well. I think Kapanen's a 15-goal guy. I don't think he's anything. He's been a 20-goal guy, but that was best case scenario, and I don't see him being a top six winger for you. So I would say 15 goals.
I think for Kapanen, yeah, something like that, 15 goals. For Kapanen, I would just want to see him play a full 200-foot game really well.
Yeah, he's going to be penalty killer for you.
For sure. Like, I don't even necessarily look at the statistics and the goal production that he could put up.
Analytics.
Yeah. Don't need any of that with Kapanen.
Get that trash out of here.
I want to see Kasperi Kapanen play a really good, reliable 200-foot game, which is what the Blues really need, obviously.
Yeah.
But for Vrana, I think saying 30 goals, maybe I'm thinking on the lower side of that just to level my expectations. Keep myself even happier for when it happens.
I mean, look, the guy is when he played for about a 3-year stretch, which, again, you have to have that caveat, he was one of the best 5-on-5 goal scorers in the NHL.
Yeah. I also think he's going to get a ton of power play opportunities.
Oh, he'll be on the number one power play unit with Kyrou and Thomas.
I would say 35 goals. Here's the thing, though. 50 points. He basically never distributes. Yeah, so he's a pure goal scorer. Don't expect this guy to go out there and if he has 35 goals, put up like 80 points this season.
What are you talking about, man? He had 23 and 27 assists with Washington.
Yeah, don't expect that here.
Because Ovechkin said, "Pass me the damn puck."
Exactly. From the 636, guys, which Blues player is due for a breakout and who is due for regression? Can I start on this one? Nobody's going to be happy with me.
Sonny.
Nobody's going to be happy with me for saying this. The player that is most likely going to regress this season compared to what we saw from them here last year is Sammy Blais.
Oh, I agree with you. Sammy Blais not putting up a goal per like 3 games on a fourth line.
He had a 25% shooting percentage. It's the same thing that I said about Barbie. That is unsustainable relative to his career norms. Some people shoot at 23%. Some people are just unbelievable shooters and they make their goals on a higher rate. Sammy Blais is not one of those players.
He's on a fourth line role. Like, he's not playing top 9 unless somebody is injured. And you're just not going to get the opportunities to score goals the way you would when you played in the top 9 last season.
He would be my regression candidate. If we're talking about a breakout candidate this year, I think we said it yesterday. Jake Neighbors would be my guy.
Yeah.
I think Jake Neighbors has a chance to be a 15-goal producer for you this year. Put up 40 points, and you leave the season feeling like, okay, that's a really good third-line winger.
Yeah. Neighbors or Perunovic would be the two for me, because if Perunovic gets an opportunity and stays healthy, I think you're going to be looking at somebody that are like, oh, damn, we need this guy more, especially on the power play. In terms of regression, I look at a player like Nick Leddy and think, man, he regressed significantly last year, and I don't know as he continues to get older if that's going to go back in the proper direction, especially if you're in a top 4 role. So unless this Mike Weber comes in and really has success with this defense, with his mentality and game plan, Nick Leddy would be my regression candidate.
I could see where you say Sammy Blais, too, just because of how well he did. And, I mean, let's be honest, there's only a few players that you can look at and say, well, they can be worse than last season. Yeah. So Sammy Blais is one of those players. But, yeah, I think Perunovic is one of them for sure, but the reason why I like Jake Neighbors in that conversation of breakout is because you saw what he did last year and how much he improved from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. So what is he going to do coming into this season, sort of knowing that he has this role? He doesn't have to fight for it, and he can be just, I don't want to say comfortable with it, but he can have an expectation of knowing that he's going to have that opportunity and really run with it, rather than worrying about staying up and not making mistakes and, doing all of those things. So I love Jake Neighbors for that.
Coming up next, tonight could be a rough night for Adam Wainwright. We're hoping that it's not, but if it is, will it be the final time that we see him start at Busch Stadium? We got to discuss that possibility next year on 101 ESPN.
It's weird to think that this could potentially be the last time Adam Wainwright starts a game at Busch Stadium. It's bizarre to think about that. Anybody who knows what Wainwright's meant to this organization is pulling for him tonight, but they can't keep trotting him out there if he's going to give up 8 runs and only get 3 outs. This has not gone well, but this is the way it normally goes.
That was John Denton earlier today on with us talking about the possibility that this could be Adam Wainwright's final start tonight for the Cardinals. And alongside Alex Ferrario and Grant Francis, I'm Brandon Kiley. T-Bone off today. He's helping out the fast lane from 2 to 6. Alex, Adam Wainwright is making the start tonight against the New York Mets. It will be a nationally televised game on Fox. In his last 2 outings, he has given the Cardinals a total of 4 innings. He has given up 15 earned runs. He has struck out 5 and walked 2. 15 earned runs.
It's not walking, guys.
In 4 innings. That is good, quote unquote, for a 33.75 ERA. Alex, I'm going to give you his ERA by month so far this year. In the month of May, 6.2. June, 9. July, 6.3. August, 33. He has the 3rd worst ERA of any starter to make at least 15 starts in a season in Major League Baseball history. And so when we have the discussion that we are about to have, that's why. It's because he's been non-competitive, not just relative to the other Cardinal starters this season, but relative to any consistent starter in the history of Major League Baseball. Nobody is rooting against Adam Wainwright. Let's make that very clear up front. But we have to have some legitimate conversations about this because that's where the Cardinals are at right now. They're having them internally. After his last start, they had to regroup and figure out, do we give him another one? They're going to do the same thing tonight, Alex. If this goes poorly against the New York Mets, I would pull the plug. I would say, that's it. Waino, if you want to stick around, if you want to continue pitching, you want to finish this thing out because you view this as like, when I was a kid, my parents would never allow me, if I had signed up for a sport, I had to stick it through, right? Even if I hated it, you got to make it through the season. That's just something, you gave your commitment, you stick to that commitment. Maybe that's something that Waino's going to have, right? Waino gave his commitment to the Cardinals. They paid him $17 million. He is going to stick to that commitment all the way through this season. Totally fair. But if you do that and tonight goes poorly, it's going to be coming out of the bullpen. You take Casey Lawrence's spot where Cardinals are in a bad situation. You got to go out there and eat those innings for them. Mm-hmm. That will be the new role for Adam Wainwright, most likely. But if this thing goes poorly tonight, I've got to look to Drew Rom. I've got to look to Michael McGreevy or Gordon Graceffo or Adam Kloffenstein or Sam Roberse. One of these guys that are starting at AAA, they will then be more deserving of the opportunities that exist currently at the big league level than Adam Wainwright. And yes, I say that with the full understanding and acknowledgement of what Waino has been for this team for the last 15 plus years. I get all of that. But at some point, you got to say, you're not competitive right now. You're putting us in a bad spot. We got to give these kids some opportunities in this rotation if it's not going to get better.
Yeah, I mean, there's a split between wanting to honor the legacy of a legacy player and developing your organization. And that's where they're at right now. You're at those crossroads where you have to part from Adam Wainwright if it goes poorly. And it sucks to say because Waino in his mind is going to say, even if he gets lit up tonight, I still got it in me. I need one more start.
Yep.
And the Cardinals can't fall into that. Not that it's a bad thing to fall into it, but they can't have that emotional side of it saying, no, we'll give you one more, Adam. Maybe we'll give you one more at the end of the season, that final start at Busch Stadium, which I fully anticipate him making that start. But if it goes poorly here, for the health of your organization development, you have to say, sorry, Waino, it's either bullpen or IL stint. Because now with Steven Matz on the injured list, now we have an opportunity to see what 4 guys have every day. Michaelis is going to be getting those starts. Hudson, Liberatore, Thompson, and then let's go down into the minors. Drew Rom, McGreevy, Graceffo, all of these guys, give them the opportunity. And I'm sure Waino understands that because Waino had to get that breakthrough moment for him to get the opportunity. And if it goes to the bullpen, you're still pitching. If you have to do an IL stint, you get that last start at Busch Stadium. But the emotional side of this is just going to have to be ripped off like a Band-Aid after the start.
I look at what Drew Rom did. He pitched again last night in his 2 starts for the Cardinals in the minors. He's gone 11 innings, allowed 2 hits, 2 earned runs, has struck out 18 and has walked just 4. He is the guy that they got in the Jack Flaherty deal with the Baltimore Orioles. I have no idea if what he does is going to work at the big league level. No clue. I don't know how anybody could possibly tell you with any sort of definitive statements that it will. But, man, it looks good right now down in AAA. He is a guy that throws like 90 miles an hour. He's got some pretty deceptive stuff. It's a good spin rate on it. He's 23 years old. I'd like to find out the rest of the way if that works.
You have to.
I'm not going to do that, though, if Waino pitches well tonight. Mm-hmm. If Waino pitches well tonight, all of the stuff that we're talking about right now, put it off to the back burner. Because then you go back to we're trying to get him 200.
Yeah.
And I've got no issues with that. The season doesn't matter. It's over. It's off to the, if you can start on a regular basis right now, Taylor Motter, and look each other in the eyes and say we're doing what we have to do, then so be it. That's where we're at as an organization right now. That's where the Cardinals have to acknowledge, hey, the season's gone awry. It is what it is. 200 is more important than anything else. But that's only the case if you think there's any sort of a attainable chance for Waino to go out there and get to 200. And over his last couple outings, he's given you no reason to believe that that is the case. So you went to Waino. My guess is you said, hey, we're going to do everything we can to make sure in your next outing it goes better. And if it does, you earn more. But we're not going to go throw this bullpen because you've said previously your best stuff is in the bullpen. We're going to eliminate that. We're going to get you your best stuff in your start. Let's see if that works. If it does, great, we'll keep going that route. If it doesn't, though, man, every other variable has been checked. You're healthy. You went on the IL. You rehabbed. You got back to where you wanted to be. You skipped your bullpen. You have seen everything that you can. You went up against the Kansas City Royals, a terrible offense, and you got shellacked in that one. At a certain point in time, the organization has to look at you and say, hey, man, there's only one variable left, and it's you.
Yeah.
And at this point, we have eliminated every other potential explanation for why this is going poorly. Now we have to eliminate the one other explanation, and it's Adam Wainwright from the rotation. So I hope it doesn't go that way. If it does go poorly tonight, somebody on the text line said, I hope that Waino doesn't get booed tonight. That's not going to happen.
It's not going to get booed at Busch Stadium.
It's not going to happen.
It's not happening.
Twitter is not real life, guys. And I know that people get so angry on Twitter about Adam Wainwright. When you go to these games, it reminds me a lot of the Matt Carpenter discourse. I would see our text line about Matt Carpenter, and then I would go to games. Dude, Matt Carpenter was one of the favorite players out at Busch Stadium every single night. People celebrated him like crazy. I think the same thing will be true tonight. People know what we're watching. If you're going down to Busch Stadium tonight and you're going down there to watch the Cardinals, you also know in the back of your mind, I might be watching the last time that Adam Wainwright takes that mound in a Cardinals uniform.
A couple of texts that we're getting. One, someone says, what if he goes 5 innings and gives up 5 runs or takes the loss after he pitches well? Look, this has nothing to do with wins or losses. If he pitches competitively, then he's going to get the next start because you're still chasing 200. This is all about if he can't make it out of an inning and is getting lit up like he did in his last start. The other one from the 314 says, guys, this is total BS. For what he's done to the organization, he deserves every opportunity for 200.
He has.
Yes.
No other player on that roster would be given the grace and the opportunities that Adam Wainwright has been given to even go out there tonight. Every other player would have been replaced already. They would have been replaced after that 1-inning performance.
Every sentiment of people saying, oh, well, what are you even playing for? It benefits you to have Waino out there because you're losing. No, look, what you're playing for is 2024, and you're playing to develop your internal options. And Drew Rom, who has been lighting up the strike zone and picking up strikeouts in his couple of starts since he's been acquired, should be getting a look at this level, but he can't get a look, one, because of the 40-man roster, which that's another story, but two, it's because Waino's in this rotation, and Hudson's in the rotation, and Liberatore's in the rotation. You don't even have a spot right now for Zach Thompson to get him opportunities. I'm assuming that's going to happen sooner or later, but you're not just going to throw him back out there, one, because that's not right to Waino to let him go out there if he can't get through an inning. But two, at some point you have to look at this and say 2024 is our focus now. And we've got to figure out what Rom and Graceffo and McGreevy and all of these guys are so that we can clear this minutia of pitching depth and do something about it in the offseason.
Is there any merit to the argument that the Cardinals would want to just keep running him out there to put butts in seats? Just the fact that he's going out to pitch.
I was going to say, somebody took a picture of Busch last night. I mean, there was nobody there. Yeah. Granted, it was the Oakland Athletics, but I mean, still, like,
if the Cardinals were winning, there'd be merit.
And you're only putting butts in seats 1 out of every 5 days for that, and I don't think that's something that the Cardinals benefit from.
That's not what they're doing right now. They're doing this because, like,
it's a valid question, though, because everybody's asking that.
I understand why people think that this is just what they're saying. It is true. The Cardinals value the legacy stuff. Like, they do. I'm watching Winning Time right now with the LA Lakers, right? and one of the episodes, this is about the Showtime era Lakers. They're talking about how this is like the early stages of free agency in the NBA. They're talking about how they're going to give one of their players a long-term extension, and it's overpaying for what he's done for them. And the owner says, yeah, but it's going to look good to the other guys that we can bring into our organization, that we take care of our own. That's how the Cardinals view it. The Cardinals have a very similar mentality to what the Lakers do. The Lakers have held that mentality for the last 40 years. They did it with Kobe Bryant, where at the end of his career, they way overpaid for what he was at that point in his career. But it's Kobe Bryant. You're going to keep him happy. You want him to be a career Laker, right? So the Cardinals do the same thing. They did it with Yadier Molina, where they did overpay him at the end. 3 years, $60 million was more than what a catcher of his ilk at that point in his career was quote-unquote worth on the open market. Doesn't matter. It's Yadier Molina. You figure it out. Adam Wainwright, 1 year, $17.5 million. Could he have gotten that elsewhere this offseason? I'm skeptical, but it doesn't matter because it's Adam Wainwright, and for the Cardinals, it's a legacy player. We keep him here. That's worth whatever the money is that is involved. The same thing is true about him getting opportunities right now. The reason why he's even getting tonight is because he's Adam Wainwright. So that's why they're doing it, is because of the legacy aspect of this. Somebody on the text line from the 636 says, guys, we're playing guys like Taylor Motter in the infield. We let 35-year-old dudes come in and pitch last night. What are you talking about? Why does it hurt to help him go out there and get 2 more wins, finish his career with 200? The season is already over. What it hurts is that at a certain point in time, when a pitcher is pitching as poorly as Waino has, you have completely put yourself behind the 8 ball. And then it has a trickle-down effect. If Waino goes 2 innings tonight, and then he goes 2 innings the next start, and 3 innings and then 1 after that, whatever. Well, now, when you have the next day's starter, they have a little bit more added pressure to them. Guess who tomorrow's starter is? Zach Thompson. Do you guys want to evaluate him? Or do you want him looking over his shoulder at all times because he knows, yesterday Waino went 2 innings, bullpen's fried, I got to make up for it. Yeah. I don't want him going out there trying to be something that he's not. I want to be able to evaluate those young starters. So that's part of why this is the case. The other thing is, man, at a certain point in time, you just got to say enough is enough. And if you've got a 33 ERA in your last 3 starts, like, what do you want from me, man? That there comes a certain point in time where you have to say, we can't do this any longer, despite what you mean to this organization.
Again, I also think you have to look at the other side of it. Like, Waino is going to be the ultimate optimist no matter what. Waino's going to say he's still got it in him. But do you really think Waino wants to be remembered at the end of his season this way? I would much rather see Waino in an opportunity of 1 or 2 innings. And I know people are saying the guy can't get through 1 inning to start, and now you're going to use him as a long man. Yeah, because I'm not relying on him to go out there and say, we need to get you that win. Now you're coming out of a bullpen in certain situations. I just don't know if you want to end his career with a bloated 66 ERA at the end of the season.
Somebody else says, guys, it doesn't affect the bullpen. All you got to do is piggyback off of him with whatever kid you're wanting to evaluate. If you feel like you have to piggyback off of him in every start, then you're not confident at all that he can get through 5. And the only way he can qualify for the win that he's doing this for is to get through 5. So that's the biggest thing is...
And how are you evaluating that player that's piggybacking off of it?
You're not giving him an actual start. He's then going through a very different routine than he would if he was getting the start. I understand this is a very unique situation. But guys, the Cardinals did this with Bob Bleepin Gibson. They did. If you think that it can happen to Bob Gibson, then it can happen to Adam Wainwright.
The man who said he was so competitive that he pissed blood, Trevor Rosenthal put that out a couple of days ago on Twitter. They put him in a bullpen.
And then he went home. He was so prideful that he said, I'm not doing this anymore. I don't want to be a show pony that you guys throw out there as a legacy player. Bob Gibson, it went so wrong for him in his final season that he packed up his stuff and said, I'm done, before the season came to a conclusion. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen with Waino, but what I'm saying is if that can happen to Bob Gibson for the St. Louis Cardinals, then yes, the conversation that we're having right now with Adam Wainwright is fair. It's justified, and it can take place to Waino as well. I know everybody wants him to get to 200. I get it. I do too.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to look everybody in the eyes and say, are we doing what's best? Is this actually for the best at this point? They've tried again. They gave him all of the opportunities you could possibly ask for, and he gets one more. And if it goes well tonight, hell, if it goes okay tonight, then he gets another. But if it goes poorly, even remotely as poorly as it has the last 2 outings, at some point, you got to cut your losses and say, Waino, we love you. We want you to be around. We think you're a great leader. If you want to do that out of the bullpen, great. If there's something affecting you health-wise, we'll put you on the IL. But we can't do this anymore with you in our rotation every 5 days. I hope that ends up being the silliest thing in the world by tomorrow. But there absolutely has to be a conversation about that potential because it is a very real potential for tomorrow. Coming up next, the Cardinals probably aren't bringing up Masyn Winn by the end of the day today. And guys, we say this as Masyn Winn apologists. That's okay. We'll explain why coming up next here on 101 ESPN. are likely to have to make a roster move today. Alongside Alex and Grant on BK. Yesterday, Alex, you had 2 injuries that took place. Tommy Edman, and it sounds like his is going to be okay. Earlier today, we talked to John Denton, Cardinals insider for MLB.com. He said, hey, the foul ball that went off of his leg, x-rays were negative, positive. That's a good thing. They're just trying to figure out where he's going to be at today. We should know more on his status in the next couple hours or so. Lars Nootbaar, much more questionable. You found that injury to be funny. I very much did not.
I don't want to go through it. I find the whole surrounding...
You're a 2-year-old where you see your dad get punched in the face. You're like, ha, that hurt.
I can't deny it. Sometimes when people use certain words, I laugh at it still. It's a little kid at heart, right?
I'm rewatching The Sopranos right now, and Tony Soprano has the same exact humor as you do.
Okay, so it's an Italian thing.
I guess
Good to
so.
know. Man, when he went down, I'm like, oh, gosh, that's great.
When they showed the replay, I said, no more. No more.
Oh, see, that's where we're different, too. When they show replays, I pause and rewind and slow, mow it so I could see how it actually impacted the area.
I can't remember which broadcast it was, but there was another baseball broadcast the other night where somebody got hit in the nether regions as well. And the broadcaster said, you get one replay. We're showing this one time and then no more. You cut it off after that. But yeah, so Lars Nootbaar, he might go on the injured list, man.
He should go on the damn injured list. Are you kidding me?
I would retire personally.
Oh, yeah, I would have retired then and there.
If he does, I think there's going to be a lot of calls for the Cardinals to bring up Masyn Winn today.
No.
Guys, I do not think that's going to happen. And I don't think it should happen. Allow us to explain.
Please.
I want Masyn Winn up as soon as humanly possible, with one little caveat. Masyn Winn should not arrive, at this point especially, now that you've waited this long, until there are 45 days remaining in the season, and he needs to get fewer than 130 at-bats, because those are the 2 qualifications for him to retain his rookie status for 2024.
Yep.
That affects both he and the Cardinals. If he retains his rookie status for next year and wins Rookie of the Year, the Cardinals can get a draft pick. That's really nice for the Cardinals. He can also get a bonus check,
which is even better for him.
That's really nice for Masyn Winn. You combine the 2 things, this is mutually advantageous for both sides to keep Masyn Winn in the minors for about the next 3 days or so. We're not talking about holding him down there until September 1st. I think that would be ridiculous. But we're a few days away. By this time next week, we should probably see Masyn Winn in the Cardinals lineup. But today, if you are forced to make a roster move because of what took place yesterday with the injuries, I think you have 3 options, Alex. None of them are particularly exciting. Moises Gomez is one option.
Yeah, little Poppy.
Juan Yepes is another option because this team needs another DH.
And Luke Baker's been fine.
Richie Palacios is the 3rd option. I would personally lean Richie Palacios. I don't think you have a center fielder on the roster if Lars Nootbaar goes on the injured list. I don't think you have another option there. Like yesterday, they had to put Tyler O'Neill out there.
Little Poppy can play there.
No, he cannot.
Baseball Reference has positions: right field, left field, center field.
He's not a center fielder. He might be as bad defensively as Jordan Walker.
I didn't realize he's got 23 home runs this season, which is more than he had last year. He had 39 last year combined between 2 places. Never mind.
So I think Richie Palacios would be the guy that I would bring up. He has been playing center field, if I'm not mistaken, for the Memphis Redbirds. I'm not going to sell you guys something that doesn't exist. Richie Palacios is not somebody that you should be super excited about. But he can play center field capably, and for the next 3 to 4 days, that's probably what you need.
For people that are get up in arms with Masyn Winn not being recalled at this time, because we know there will be certain people that do, you went this long without Masyn Winn, what's 3 more days? Yeah. It's like my parents used to tell me around Christmas time. Like, you made it this far, kid. You got 3 more days. Just wait until Christmas. Masyn Winn will be here. But why waste a rookie opportunity? And maybe he has no shot of winning the Rookie of the Year next year. But I'm going to give myself the opportunity. Yeah. And if I waste that because Lars Nootbaar got hit in the newts last night just to get Masyn Winn up here, I'm not going to do that. Give me 3 more days of Taylor Motter and Jose Fermin in your infield. And then what would this be? This would be the start of the next series. So Sunday, Monday? call up Masyn Winn, and he's in my lineup.
Yeah, Monday you travel to Pittsburgh. He can travel to Pittsburgh with them.
And I like the idea of Palacio, mostly because I already know what Yepez is. John Denton basically told us, like, there's really no role for him. You know what Moises Gomez is, according to BK, not a center fielder.
Yeah, according to everybody.
So the only one that I don't know about is this Richie Palacio, who's hitting 300 in Memphis. Let's find out if you can be a better version of Oscar Mercado for next year. And if it fails miserably, well, then I can check that off the list for next season also.
How'd you feel about your execution on Lars Nootbaar got hit in the Newts? I feel like it should have been Lars got hit in the Newts.
Yeah, I shouldn't have said Nootbaar, but I also didn't let it simmer.
Yeah.
I actually just poured that glass of wine and drank it. I didn't let it
aerate.
Aerate, thank you. I was going to say I didn't know the proper word for that. I'm not a wine connoisseur if you don't know that about me.
I'm starting to get into it a little more.
Are you?
Yeah. Are you a typical, like my grandma?
I dabble.
My grandma, full Italian. She red wine, always three ice cubes in it. Every time.
No, I don't do ice cubes in wine. No.
I think it's an older Italian, like grandma type of thing.
I'm more red wine, though.
Yeah.
Katie and I do the red wine.
Grant, you get into the wine at all?
No, it gives me heartburn terribly.
Okay.
So,
well,
no.
All of it gives me heartburn.
Could you say that he got neutered last night, maybe? I'll go
Hell
away.
yeah, Grant! That's what we're talking about! Yeah!
I was waiting on that for a couple seconds.
That was fantastic.
I knew you'd like that, Alex.
Oh, God, that's so good.
It's a proud moment for me.
God, that's amazing.
It's a cancer. That's what it is.
Hey, man, don't jump in on Grant's moment right now. He's gonna live off of that for the rest of this segment.
The candy's nuts. NFL Quick Hitters is next. Hey, it's BK. Do you remember that childhood piggy bank that you had? All the satisfaction that you felt as you were finally reaping the rewards of all of your diligent savings? Well, with Truehold, you can access your biggest piggy bank yet, your home's equity. You'll start enjoying the retirement that you planned for right now, and here's the best part. You don't even have to move. Here's how you do it. Truehold will buy your home for its best current value while it remains high, and you get to bank all the cash now while you continue living in your home for as long as you'd like. Plus, Truehold will cover all of the property taxes, insurance, repairs, and maintenance too. And since they pay your home's current value in cash, that money is yours to do whatever you'd like with. So start enjoying your home's equity while it remains high by visiting Truehold.com, and you'll discover how much they'll buy your home for today based on its best current value. Call 1-855-300-9993, or you can visit them at Truehold.com to learn about the smarter and faster way to cash out on your home's full value without having to move. That's 1-855-300-9993, or visit Truehold.com.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Last night, the Cardinals fall in the series finale to the Athletics 8-0. Matthew Liberatore got lit up in that start. Tonight, they'll look to turn the page and start a 4-game set against the New York Mets. It'll be Jose Quintana for New York, who's got a 3.03 ERA this season. Adam Wainwright for the Cardinals. First pitch will be at 6:15. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
All right, let's dive into some NFL quick hitters alongside Alex and Grant on BK. T-Bone out today. He'll be on the fast lane from 2 to 6. He got the call up to the big leagues. We'll see if he's a 4A player, if he could really hang around.
4A, 3A player.
AAA?
2A player.
Okay. All right, let's
Single A.
Speaking of 4A players, Alex Ferrario.
Nice. Why are we talking about Luke and Baker here?
Whoa. Chill out. He was good last night. Let's not make that turn at third, big boy. Let's stay there. We'll get you home on the next day.
Yeah, we're good with runners in scoring position, my man.
ESPN put together a list of their ceilings and floors for all 32 teams. Alex, I think the list is flawed, and I'll tell you why. For every team, they had a gap between the ceiling and the floor of being 5 games. So, like, for example, the Buffalo Bills. They say their ceiling this year is going 13-4. Their floor is 8-9. So there's a 5-game gap between their ceiling and their floor. They did the same thing for every team, right? Not necessarily like every team could win 13 games, but the New England Patriots, ceiling of 10 wins, floor of 5. I don't think that's the case. I think there are certain teams that have a wider gap between what their ceiling can be and what their floor can be, depending on, the circumstances of the season. In your opinion, Alex, who do you think has the widest gap between their ceiling and their floor this year? So, like, you could see them going 12-5, but you could also see it going 5-12 if things go horribly awry for that team. Who is that for you?
Oh, man, this is a good one. I would say Detroit's probably that team.
I like that.
Mostly because I can see that team kind of in the same ilk in terms of ceiling as the Buffalo Bills. I could see them being an 11, 12, 13 win team. They've got all of the offensive power, but I can also see them being a massive floor team to where you're talking about a sub 500 roster and talking about potentially one of the bottom dwellers in the NFL. I could see that being that wide of a margin with that team because they still are in that development stage.
I think for me, my team would be the Green Bay Packers.
I thought about them too.
And the reason why is because I have no idea what Jordan Love is going to be. Jordan Love, to me, is I think the NFC North is a really good spot to find this because somebody's got to win the damn division. And somebody's probably going to be a lot better than we expect in that division. The favorite seems to be Detroit, but it could be Minnesota. Chicago could technically do this. Green Bay is my pick because I think their defense should be pretty good. They've got a lot of talent on that side of the ball. I think their offense should be pretty good. They've got a lot of talent on that side of the ball as well. But Jordan Love is the question mark, man.
Yeah.
If he comes in and is solid, if he can be Jimmy Garoppolo, Derek Carr, that mid-tier level starter this year with a little more mobility than the guys that I just mentioned, okay, you'll be fine. And you could win 10, 11, maybe even 12 games if things all go your way, kind of like Minnesota last year. But it's also entirely possible that he is just awful. Like, he just might be a terrible quarterback for the Packers this year. And if that ends up being the case, dude, they could fall to the basement in the NFC North, win 6 games, 5 games, and we look next year at, that's the team that is going to get a top 3 pick and has to pick their quarterback next year.
Yeah.
So I think the gap for them is wider than just about any other team in the NFL.
The other one that I came up with, too, are the Browns. Just because...
Depending on what happens with Deshaun.
I mean, if Deshaun's not the same quarterback he once was, you're talking about another team that should be a bottom dweller. But if Deshaun's the guy that they thought he was when they traded for him, and you're talking about having Garrett Wilson on that roster, and you're talking about Myles Garrett on defense, that should be a clear-cut playoff team, so they'd be another one.
I was thinking about the Steelers, too, because of Kenny Pickett, and I've seen some things that said that he's had a really good training camp and all that, so he could be a wild card going into the season. The Steelers have always been a team that's had a pretty solid defense, so if they can straighten things out offensively, they could be a team that takes some opportunity in that AFC North.
All right, let's do some fantasy here, Alex. Fantasy football question for you. Let's go to the first round. These are the top 12 picks. I'm going to read off these names, and I want you in the back of your mind to think to yourself, who is the player that when you take them, you are the most afraid of what the outcome's going to be?
I already know.
You like it, but you're terrified of what the season's going to be for one reason or another. These are their first-round picks right now in your typical average fantasy football draft. Justin Jefferson, Christian McCaffrey, Jamar Chase, Tyreek, Eckler, Kelsey, Cooper Kupp, Diggs, Barkley, Bijan Robinson, CeeDee Lamb, and Nick Chubb. Those are the top 12 players right now in your typical fantasy draft. Which name, when I said it, did you think to yourself, oh, bleep, this could go horribly awry for me?
I've got two. I wonder what yours are.
Go first.
Okay, I was going to say CMC and Saquon for the same reason, which is injuries. Because CMC gets hurt both of them, they are going to get their fair share of, getting the football, but they just can't stay healthy. You are absolutely taking a wild guess. You don't know if you are going to have that RB1 for your whole season because chances are they are probably going to get injured at some point.
Yeah, I actually don't feel uncomfortable with CMC. He'd be in Saquon, actually, for me, too. I feel comfortable with. Surprisingly, mine would be Bijan Robinson.
Really?
I'm a little concerned about all of the hype with him.
Okay.
It's a matter of you're taking this player to be a first-round pick. Granted, you're probably taking him somewhere between 8 and 12. You're taking him to be a first-round pick, and he's still a rookie, and it's still on an Atlanta Falcons team that I'm just unsure of right now. So he would be one. The other one, and I said this before, and I got a lot of backlash for it, but Stephon Diggs would make me nervous.
Get the bleep out of here,
He
man.
made me nervous last year, man, and I understand he was injured. I understand Josh Allen was injured. Still makes me nervous, especially now that Gabe Davis came on the scene last year. I wonder how much Gabe Davis becomes a massive part of that offense.
Mine is Saquon Barkley. The one that makes me the most nervous is Saquon because we all know what the talent is there. But last year, a lot of the value in Saquon Barkley, especially if you play a PPR league, man, the dude caught 60 passes for 350 yards. That's 60 points with the pass catching that he was able to get, and then another, 40 points from the receiving yards. That helps you a lot over the course of a season. What if they brought in some better targets for their quarterback this past offseason? They did. And now some of those targets end up going elsewhere. Or they decide, you know what, Saquon, we kind of rode you into the ground by the end of last season. You do have an injury history. Let's maybe take back the workload a little bit. That's my concern with Saquon. When you're in this first round, you got to be, all of these guys make you a little nervous, right? Because it's such high. And we're picking nits a little bit.
I think there's 2 guys on that list that I feel comfortable taking in the first round. 3 guys that I wouldn't be worried about.
But when you're looking at these guys, you got to. What is the one that makes you the most nervous? For me, it would easily be Saquon Barkley. All right, Alex, mid-tier quarterback. You're going into your fantasy football draft. You've waited. Uh-oh, all the quarterbacks just went off the board. Now you have to find your guy, and you're scrambling a little bit. We're in the middle rounds. Which of these players do you most want to be your quarterback? Deshaun Watson, Dak Prescott, Tua Tagovailoa, or Daniel Jones?
Can I insert another name here?
Deshaun, Dak, Tua, Daniel Jones. Which one do you want?
Deshaun. Dak makes me very nervous. Daniel Jones, no bleeping way. And then Tua, again, injury history. I asked to add one. I would say Jared Goff. I would put Jared Goff before all of those because of the offense.
And he's going even later.
Yeah. I would wait. If that's my options and I'm talking about the 6th, 7th round with one of those guys, I think I would just take more offense and hope I get the quarterback later. But if I was to pick one out of those, it would be Deshaun because you're going upside more than anything. And if Deshaun is this guy, you're talking about one of the top quarterbacks in the game.
I think I would go with Tua, and I know I'm kind of talking out both sides of my mouth because I just brought up the injury history with those 2 running backs, but I find quarterbacks to be one of those things where you take the best player that's going to produce the most points when he's healthy, and then if he does go down, you can usually find a good enough quarterback that's serviceable that hasn't been drafted in your league. So that's why I would just take Tua in that sense.
So I always go with the running quarterback. because there's just so much value in the rushing touchdowns. The ability to be able to get those is huge. And so I don't want to watch Deshaun Watson on a weekly basis.
I just don't want to watch the Browns.
I don't want to root for him, but if I have to take a quarterback from this area of the draft, my top 2 targets would be Daniel Jones or Deshaun Watson. So I'd probably lean Deshaun Watson in that respect. The guy that I would probably do, Alex, if I was pulling your card of, hey, none of those 4, I'm going to wait even further, how about Russell Wilson?
Yeah.
I don't think Russell Wilson's going to be great this year. But man, 2 years ago, Russell Wilson was one of the better quarterbacks in the league. He has decent weapons on that team. You got a pretty good running game. They went from the worst coaching in the NFL to a guy that I think is a top 5 coach in the league in Sean Payton. If you can just get solid production out of Russ, and then they get into the red zone and he adds a little bit of value with his legs as a runner, you could see Russell Wilson as a top 12 quarterback by the end of the year, and you're taking him right now as like quarterback 15.
Yeah.
So that would be somebody that I would consider as well. Russell Wilson a little later in the draft.
He would probably be the one that would make me the most nervous, though, because like if he busts, I'm on the waiver wire the entire season hoping to find some type of quarterback.
In that scenario, I'm probably taking like Russell Wilson and Derek Carr or Matt Stafford.
Yeah.
I'm just going super late round quarterback with both of them, and then I hope that one of those last 2 ends up giving me a little bit of a
Someone
floor.
brought up Geno Smith. That'd be another one that I'd if I'm going to go that low, I would take a massive risk on that player.
Geno this year,
I do
dude.
too, especially with those 3 weapons, and you're talking about the rushing ability.
Good offensive line too.
And with Pete Carroll, yeah.
That was a team I was thinking about when you talked about the biggest gap between ceiling and floor, just based off of what Geno Smith does. Yeah.
Geno's season this year is a big part of what's going to determine their outcome. Who is the team, Alex, if you could call your shot today? Who is your team that you would say nobody's expecting them to do anything? I think they're going to be better than expectations. Whether that means like go on to win the Super Bowl or something, like whatever, set that aside. The team that you think is going to be much better than everybody currently expects is who?
Seattle would be one of them, but I would go more towards Chicago. I think people still view Chicago as a team that's going to be fighting for a top pick, and I just don't agree with that. I think with DJ Moore, with Justin Fields' mobility, and they did significantly upgrade their defense and offensive line through the draft and free agency, I think Chicago is going to be fighting for one of those top spots in their division.
I've mentioned it before. My team would be Atlanta. I think it's one of the teams in the NFC South. Take your pick. Whoever you're higher on than most, I think you can go with that one. Carolina's another one.
Yeah.
I don't know what to expect out of Bryce Young this year, and that's really what makes me nervous.
But they got the right weapons for him.
They've got some decent weapons. They're fine. I really like their defense. I think we underestimate how good their defense was last year because their offense was so atrocious. If Bryce Young comes in and is a solid, serviceable, mid-tier starter, I think that team could win 10 games this year. I know that sounds crazy right
nervous,
now.
though.
Absolutely. I wouldn't have taken him number 1 overall. I would have taken him 3rd.
Yeah.
But they're the team that I would be curious about.
They've got the best weapons out of all of the rookie quarterbacks, in my opinion. Like with C.J. Stroud and Anthony Richardson, I think Bryce Young's got the best weapons out of all of them.
Grant, who's your team?
You know, I was thinking about Green Bay, and I think the only lock here in this conversation is that it's a team coming out of the NFC.
Sure.
Because the NFC is just such garbage.
I mean, it's hard to
It's
come out of the
abysmal.
AFC, right? Like Cincinnati. Who are the teams in the AFC that we aren't expecting to be good? New England, Tennessee, Indy, Houston, Vegas, and Denver. Like those 6.
Yeah.
Everybody else has expectations, and I think it's going to be really hard for any of those 6 that we just named to be able to kind of come out of the basement.
But seeing what Jordan Love can do can be interesting. I was listening to Anthony Stalter the other day on the Fast Lane talk about the Packers and how they're going to be able to run more of the offense that they want to run with Jordan Love, and the offensive line looks good. So they're an interesting one to keep an eye on in this conversation.
Like that. Alongside Alex Ferrario and Grant Francis, I'm Brandon Kiley. Plenty more NFL content and fantasy football content coming your way over the next couple of weeks as we prepare for the start of the NFL season. Coming up next, we're diving into the junk drawer because our guy T-Bone apparently called his shot yesterday. We got to hear this next here on 101 ESPN. All right, let's dive into the junk drawer. And junk is what T-Bone brought to the gauntlet yesterday. Did you hear this?
Junk to the gauntlet or the fast lane yesterday?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just making sure.
So, our guy T-Bone got the call up to the big leagues. He's on afternoon drive. This is a big opportunity for our boy T-Bone. Can't really ask for anything more than this. You're going up with not just the fast lane, but a former NHL superstar defenseman in Jamie Rivers, who is now going to be serving as the primary analyst on Bally Sports Midwest for Blues games. I mean, this is a big deal for him to get this opportunity.
As Eminem said in 8 Mile, Mom Spaghetti.
So,
he also said other things.
It's actually Mima Spaghetti for Tanner. But
or his own spaghetti.
He's getting the opportunity to co-host the Fast Lane. And every day at 4 o'clock, they do the gauntlet. And T-Bone knew, this is my shot.
Yeah, don't let a chance to blow.
And he went for it. Here's what it sounds like.
You can write it down, 402.
Oh, wow.
T-Bone is winning the gauntlet today and going to silence the critics.
All right, Greg, you heard the man. Wow.
Yowzers.
Good luck, T-Bone. If it's Antonio Gates, Greg wins. If it's Wes Welker, T-Bone wins. If it's Danny Amendola, we go to a walk-off. Answer is
Antonio Gates.
Oh, Greg!
You have chosen wisely.
Nice job, buddy. Nice job. Congratulations there today. You get the victory, 5-4.
Got you, T-Bone.
Good for you, Greg.
Babe Ruth called his shot over there.
Yeah. I pointed and then I missed.
Yeah. T-Bone.
Yeah.
You can't call your shot and lose.
Yeah.
I mean, that sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of awkward.
Well, now you'll have a couple of days to think about it.
Kind of.
You know, my goodness.
It wasn't even a swing and miss. It was more like a Luke and Baker just watching the camera.
No, this was like a Burley hit where it was like right at somebody. I mean, I lost by a point, you know?
You know what this was, BK? And
Overconfidence?
Well, I can make this.
Over-promising and under-delivering, something you know a lot about.
Whoa! Damn!
I kid. I didn't
That
mean
is
it.
not true. No, this was. Have you ever seen the movie Benchwarmers?
Of course. I don't think that movie could be made today either.
No, it couldn't, but it was hilarious. But this was the point where I think it was either David Spade or Napoleon Dynamite's character. When they walked up to the plate, I think it was David Spade, and he pointed to the outfield like he was going to hit a home run. And then he moved his finger down. Then he pointed right in front of him because that's where he knew the ball was going to go. That's what T-Bone should have done instead of call his shot there.
He should have done that. He didn't, because he has the self-confidence. Like, he carries himself as if he's Barry Bonds walking around here, the greatest power hitter of our era. And really, he's like Alec Burleson. He made the comparison. There's nothing wrong with being Alec Burleson, man. It's a really nice major leaguer.
I'd take Alec Burleson.
Hanging around,
Hell,
good buddies with everybody.
I'd take Taylor Motter right now.
Yeah, he's got a good living, right? But you got to know who you are. You got to be comfortable in that set of shoes. And T-Bone's out here thinking that he's going to take on the greatest ping pong players in the world, and he's going to beat them in the Olympics. He's talking about going up against Brooke Grimsley and kicking her butt in tennis or pickleball.
Thinks he can hit a pitch from Adam Wainwright now in Major League Baseball.
He thinks he would have hit like 17 home runs in the home run derby.
Yeah.
He's out here calling his shot at everything, and then he gets his opportunity, and he pees down his leg.
Oh, man. This is like when you bring that puppy dog home, and the puppy dog pees in the house, and you're like, don't do that again. And the puppy dog cowers in the corner. That's what T-Bone's probably going to be like after this one.
To T-Bone's defense.
No.
Never mind.
No defense for T-Bone. He called his shot, and he failed. Do you know what your record is on the gauntlet when you filled in?
Oh, it's worse, but I never call my shot.
I'm 2-1.
I'm 0-1.
I'm terrible.
Really?
A walk-off. That was before I made the questions.
A walk-off. I'm 2-1. I won the first two, and then the one I lost was in Alton. When we were out there
I remember that. That guy got in your head. It was kind of like the home run derby where you have a kid in left field.
He had his whole family there chirping me, too, the entire time. I don't do well under pressure.
We know, buddy.
Certain situations. Sometimes I'm great under pressure. Yeah.
You want to talk about it?
I'll let you figure out what those situations are.
How old are your kids?
2-1.
Okay.
Yeah. Great under pressure.
Somebody said T-Bone's going to get picked again today, and he's probably going to choke again. Hey, man, all of the pressure is on Tanner Hendrickson today. All of it.
And I hope he calls his shot again. I hope he sticks with that confidence moving forward because it's a good thing to have.
I hope he gets random. I just want to see chaos.
I want him to get baseball. I want him to get baseball.
You want him to get beat in his best category.
Yes.
Okay.
Where the confidence is at an all-time high.
No excuses. I need him to call his shot again today. He's going back to back. I'm calling my shot. I'm going to win. Nobody can beat me. And then Rick from Ellsville comes in and just wipes the floor with him.
Pulls the elbow out.
People's elbow.
Rock bottoms him.
Somebody said he can't get picked today. He lost yesterday.
Yeah.
They got to change the rules.
Yeah, T-Bone has to go again.
Be the one that goes today.
T-Bone's got to go again.
Somebody said T-Bone totally BKO'd himself. That was even worse than a BKO.
That was a TKO.
That was all of the confidence you could possibly have in yourself. And he just failed spectacularly.
Yeah. Well, apparently Greg is texting in the one that beat T-Bone yesterday, and he says, I can't pick him today. No, you can, sir. I beg you to demand Tanner once again. They won't do it, but it's fine.
I think they should. I think they should allow... or, you know what? Maybe next week we'll do a T-Bone Trivia Tuesday here on BK and Ferrario.
Oh, I'll be gone, though. So I'll be listening for that one.
Give him an opportunity to redeem himself.
Hey, you know what? As the commissioner of the Gauntlet questions,
that's true.
I feel like I can, override the decision.
See, there you go.
And say Tanner can play today.
There you go. Make sure Rivs and Marshy know that.
Yeah, you tell Jamie Rivers that. Don't.
No, we're gone.
That's fine.
Say that until we're both in our car in the parking lot, please.
Coming up next, what was the thing we got most wrong about the Cardinals in 2023? Because we were obviously wrong about a lot. What were we most wrong about? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario with you to talk about my friends at Rhino Shield. Plenty of businesses around the area have made the right decision. Busy Bubbles Laundry in Alton, Hindu Temple in St. Louis of Baldwin. You have RHI in Peevely. A lot of businesses, commercial businesses, have called Darren and Rhino Shield. Why? Because the exterior of their business looks worn down. Whether that be water damage, whether that just be age of being around for a long period of time. When you got your business, or maybe it is your home, that looks like it needs a facelift, Rhino Shield comes into play. And they're the best decision out of all of these because they have a paint that it cures 8 to 10 times thicker than any other product that you're going to buy over the counter. It's a 2 to 3 coat process, and it's backed by a 25-year transferable warranty. So when you use Rhino Shield, you set it and forget it. You know that you're taken care of. It's 100% waterproof. It deflects 90% of the UV rays. Give Darren a call today. Have him come out and give you a free estimate. Tell him Alex Ferrario sent you. You'll fall in love with Rhino Shield's work. 877-25-RHINO, 877-25rhino.com.
What was the thing that we got the most wrong about the Cardinals in 2023? Alongside Alex and Grant on BK, T-Bone on with the Fast Lane today. So MLB.com wrote about the thing that we got most wrong about every team so far this season. For the Cardinals, their suggestion was, we thought they had enough pitching to survive, and clearly that was incorrect. Alex, when you think about your preseason expectations, what we were talking about during spring training, and what has actually taken place so far this year, what do you think you got most wrong about the team?
It's what you just said, that they have enough pitching to survive, that their pitching is just good enough to keep them afloat. I thought that 1 through 5 with Flaherty and Montgomery and Michaelis and Matz, not even bringing into consideration of what Adam Wainwright was going to be, I thought that you had the guys to give you the proper amount of innings and keep you competitive. And then I thought that the depth that they had in terms of Hudson, Liberatore, Thompson, these guys in the minors that you could call upon if something goes wrong, they were going to be good enough and take that next step in the development process for you to say, yeah, we're good. I thought you had 9 guys that were going to be able to carry you through this season, and you get to the deadline, upgrade something small here, and consider yourself a go. That was not the case at all. Your pitching not only wasn't good enough, you didn't have enough arms to even give you the opportunity to stay competitive in the National League Central. So that's what I was completely wrong on.
I would agree with that. Pitching is probably the number one thing. I also think that one thing that's understated a little bit, and this can be said for the Blues and the Cardinals as well. You know, the Blues lose David Perron. They lose that presence in the locker room and that leadership of what he brought to the team. And I think for the Cardinals, losing Yadier Molina and losing Albert Pujols was more important to the team than we all said. And I think a lot of the issues for the Cardinals, you know, because it wasn't all pitching this season. The defense has been really bad at times. The offense has gone dry. The confidence has been non-existent a lot of the season. And I think a lot of that comes from you lose Yadier Molina, you lose Albert Pujols, you don't have that leadership quality. And yeah, you still have Adam Wainwright, but you can't really get it from Adam Wainwright whenever he's struggling so much.
And I remember when we talked to Clint Hurdle, and I asked him about that. And he said, look, if you lose guys in your clubhouse and your leadership is gone and your culture is gone, then your roster wasn't in a good enough spot to lose that type of leadership. And he was lights out, nail on that one.
So I'm going to start out with something I was very right about. I was right about this offense.
How'd they do against Pete Blackburn last night?
Don't pay attention to
the
that.
Athletics.
Look over here. The numbers on the back of the baseball card.
Gosh.
Look pretty good. This offense is as good as I expected it to be. A little more inconsistent than I'd like.
Mike Myers just thrown a no-hitter against the Cardinals.
But that's not what the question is. The question is, what did we get wrong? And for me, what I got wrong about this team is that their defense, I thought, would be a net positive. I thought that the rule changes would be a net positive for the Cardinals, and I could not have been more wrong. The rule changes clearly impacted them in a meaningful way. The lack of a shift impacted their ground ball pitchers because now ground balls are getting through at a higher rate than they did previously. The increase in stolen bases around the league has not led to a significant increase in stolen bases for the Cardinals. They are 23rd this year in Major League Baseball in stolen bases. They've got 73 on the season. They're 25th in defensive runs saved this year at a -12. This is despite the fact that over the last few years, they've been a very good defensive team. So the biggest things that I got wrong, stuff that used to be a real positive for the Cardinals, defense, base running, stolen bases, athleticism, all that stuff, it has gone the opposite direction this year. And I didn't see that drop-off coming. And I think even if the pitching was exactly what it's been so far this year, you changed nothing about that. If they had just played the same level of defense as they did last year, and they were the same base running team as they had been in previous seasons, I think this team would have been competitive at the deadline, and I'm not sure they have a full-blown sell-off. And I'm saying that including what the pitching was, changing nothing else, just improving the defense and improving the base running. I think they might have been a holder because they were close enough in the division and not a full-blown seller.
The one part that I'd push back on that is on the starting rotation side of things, I agree. But, man, that bullpen, I don't even know if your defense was the issue with that bullpen. Your bullpen had so many blow-ups in terms of giving up home runs and giving up leads late, not solely because of the defense, but just because.
That's where I think that they would have gone out and got bullpen arms at the deadline this year.
When we talked about Andrew Chafin, when we talked about our guy, Matt Moore, like there were guys out there that if you would have just upgraded that area, and that might be the bigger portion of my pitching inaccuracy going into the season was I thought you had it set up perfectly with Hicks, Housley, Gallegos, and Cabrera, I thought those 4 were going to carry you through this season, and it showcased that none of them were clutch enough for you consistently.
By the way, Matt Moore, just to do a revisionist history thing, right? We were very wrong about a lot of the starting pitchers that were on the market. Maybe not wrong. They just wouldn't have worked out this year. Rodon got hurt. DeGrom got hurt. Some of the other guys that we talked about, it just hasn't been a good year for them. But Matt Moore, the relievers that we discussed a lot, they've been pretty damn good. Yeah. Matt Moore got a 1-year deal worth $7 million this season. He has a 1.6 ERA in 35 appearances. Now, he's dealt with some injuries, but a 1.6 ERA, yeah, that would help with this team right now. Then you look at what Andrew Chafin has been so far this season. He's been pretty darn good as well. 4.5 ERA, not ideal, but when he was with Arizona, a 4.2 ERA in 43 appearances. A lot of that was one blow-up that we saw against the Cardinals. His fielding independent this year is a 3.5, which would be among the best on the St. Louis Cardinals. So if they would have gone out and gotten one of those relievers, I mean, preferably 2 of them, but at least one of them, we'd be talking about a lot different situation for this team as well. But I do think a lot of it comes back to the defense cracked in a way that I was unprepared for.
Well, and if you look at the areas that it cracked, the third baseman that you had no reason to believe it was going to fall, had a bad start to the season with Nolan Arenado. Your second base / shortstop position, it just never really got into that same comfortability that you expected it to be, because Edman was potentially the shortstop, and then Paul DeJong was back, and then you were going through the grooming process with Nolan Gorman, and your outfield completely imploded. You had no Tyler O'Neill. Nobody took over the center field spot, and Jordan Walker looked like he needed more reps in right field. So everywhere on that diamond except for Paul Goldschmidt, it really just kind of completely collapsed on you.
Going back to that bullpen, one thing that we were right about was the concern about Ryan Helsley being able to back up what he was a year ago. Helsley, for his entire career, has been a real health question. And last season, he put it all together. My fear, Alex, is that Ryan Helsley will become for the bullpen what Tyler O'Neill was for your outfield. Where you see one season, it's like, holy bleep. When this guy is healthy and good to go, he's one of the best dudes in the entire league at what he does. For Tyler O'Neill, that's playing left field. For Ryan Helsley, it's being at the back end of a bullpen. Last year was remarkable. 1.25 ERA on the season. Struck guys out left and right. Struck out 94 batters in 64 innings. Just a remarkable season in every way possible. But prior to that, he hadn't been a consistent player for the Cardinals at all. In 2020, a 5.2 ERA. 2021, 4.6 ERA. Was a negative wins above replacement. This year was really solid for the most part when he was out there, but did have some significant blow-ups for the Cards. And then the injuries took place again. And yesterday, there was an update from the ballpark. Sounds like there was a little bit of a bump in the road with his rehab process. He is dealing with some soreness. Now, the initial MRI scan came back, and there wasn't anything to be too concerned about. But I do wonder if the Cardinals will say, listen, our season at this point is over. We don't need to rush him back. There is 6 weeks left in the season. Is it even worth us trying to push it for him to be back on the big league stage this year? I think if he's fine, if they get the scans back and they say, you know what, 2 weeks from now he can restart this program, maybe you try it again. But if there's any pushback whatsoever at that point, I think you shut him down for the rest of the year and say, let's try this again in 2024. But Ryan Helsley, for me, man, I am very concerned about what he's going to look like in that bullpen next year. And I think you have to treat him the way that you treated Tyler O'Neill this year in the outfield, which is if he plays, great. But we have to be prepared to play most of the season next year without Ryan Helsley in that pen.
I know it's not the same injury and it's not the same length of injuries, but Ryan Helsley gives me the Alex Reyes jitters, mostly because it always felt like you were trying to get him back. You try and get him back, and then when he came back, it didn't work out. I don't want to go down that path with Ryan Helsley, especially if you're banking on him being a massive part of this bullpen for the next couple of seasons. I don't want to go down this path of let's just get him back so he can pitch again. And then when he pitches again, it doesn't feel right, and we have to shut him down. And then when he makes his rehab stint, something goes wrong, and it doesn't feel right. You can't go down that vicious circle of him not being available. I would eliminate any consideration of bringing him back this season and say, dude, just get right. If you want to go on a rehab stint before the end of the season, fine. But we don't need to rush you back to the majors because, frankly, there's no reason to.
He's Alex Ferrario. That's Grant Francis. I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up next, we might have a little bit of a guest appearance here on 101 ESPN. Here we go. If you're watching on YouTube, you already know.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't do without. I'll sing it, boys. Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so free.
Flying away on a wing and a prayer.
Who could it be?
Believe it or not, it's just me.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line.
Thank
a
you,
beautiful
St.
rendition
Louis.
of Believe It or Not here on
Wow.
101 ESPN. Shout out to T-Bone. He is Mariah carrying us.
Yeah,
He's leaving the room right now.
Gotta rest the voice before he talks for 4 hours. By the way, he complained that we didn't do it without him, and I said, dude, you sing 95% of the song. There's no reason for us to do it, and we're not gonna put Grant in that position.
We decided, you know what? We're gonna have a feature on today's show.
Yeah.
We're going to go ahead and call out T-Bone.
Yeah. We'll bring in Mariah.
He's going to be a part of this show for us for roughly 47 seconds.
Yeah, and then go rest the vocal cords for 4 hours.
All right, let's play a game of Believe It or Not. Guys, believe it or not, tonight is Adam Wainwright's final start at Busch Stadium.
Not believing it. Regardless of, he could give up 15 runs in the first inning. He's going to make that final start at Busch Stadium of the season. IL stint, bullpen, he'll get that final start at Busch Stadium. Whether it's the second to last game or the final game, my guess would be the final game of the season. He's going to make that start at Busch.
Yeah, I think at the very least, he's going to get that final start. I also think that he is still going to get starts after this. I hear the argument for not making that start. I feel like the Cardinals are still going to run him out there.
Guys, I think I'm going to believe it. I hope like hell to be wrong here. Obviously, the best thing for Waino, for the Cardinals, for everybody involved is that Waino goes out there and shoves tonight. I hope he gets win number 199. All of us are obviously rooting for that. I feel like I have to say that because otherwise people get mad. But if I'm putting on my projection cap, right, my prognostication cap going into tonight,
man, lower the vocabulary a little bit.
I don't think it's going to go well for Waino. The velocity's not there. He said after his last game, listen, I don't have anything. I can't get anybody out with anything that I'm throwing right now, and I don't understand it. I don't understand it either. If he was going to do well, Kansas City's a pretty good place to do it. It's a pitcher's park. It's pitcher friendly. Busch Stadium also pitcher friendly, and it did not go well for him against Colorado either. Kansas City and Colorado are not exactly two juggernaut offenses that he's gone up against in his last two outings. So it's not about the opposition. It's about him and his stuff. So I'm going to say I believe it because I don't think they're going to run him back out there if it goes poorly again.
Not even that final series?
And I don't think that he will say, all right, run me out there for one final start against the Cincinnati Reds. I think the way that would probably work is maybe he goes out there for an inning as a reliever. But if he's not built up at that point, I don't think that they're going to throw him out there for a start. Maybe he would start, quote unquote, the game as an opener and give you an inning, and then they pull him out of the game afterwards. But I think it's easier to do that just as a reliever in some capacity on October 1st.
Yeah.
Alex?
Believe it or not, let's go a little fantasy football style because I've been kind of sick of hearing these people bring this up. Believe it or not, Jahmyr Gibbs lives up to the hype that he provides for this upcoming season. Everything I've read and seen says if you draft Jahmyr Gibbs, you're winning your fantasy football league this season. Yeah.
You know who I'm actually higher on than most people are? Is the starting running back in Detroit, which does not appear to be Jahmyr Gibbs.
Dude,
I like David Montgomery.
Dude, he was so inconsistent in Chicago.
Yeah, behind one of the worst offensive lines in the league. I think you're getting a significant discount. If he simply has, and I think he could have more than this, but if he simply has the Jamal Williams role from a year ago, dude, that is a super valuable role. I would absolutely love to have that player on my fantasy team this year, and I don't have to draft him until the 7th round to be able to get it.
Yeah.
So I like David Montgomery. He's the one that I am probably more excited to draft because of where you can draft him this year in fantasy. The guys that are going around him, Javonte Williams, DeAndre Swift, James Cook, Antonio Gibson, A.J. Dillon. I would rather have David Montgomery than any of them. Now, the other guy in that range that I really like is Isaiah Pacheco. I think he's being undervalued as well. But I'm going to say forget it. I don't think he's the guy that I want. I want the other guy from their backfield in Detroit. Grant, what do you got for today for Believe It or Not, my friend?
All right, guys. So 2 years ago in fantasy, Kyle Pitts had an outstanding season at tight end.
Oh.
Don't bring up the pits.
Last season, I had him in fantasy.
Oh, never again, right?
He's the pits.
Yeah, it was a very sad season for me in fantasy last year. But believe it or not, Kyle Pitts has a comeback season this year and is a good pick for your fantasy league.
I'm not
believing it either.
Yeah, I'm not believing this one.
Can I give you guys Kyle Pitts numbers from a year ago? I feel like people underestimate just how bad it was.
Oh no, I know.
I know exactly how bad it was.
How bad it was.
He had 28 receptions for 350 yards and 2 touchdowns. Can I read you off players on their team that had more touchdowns last year than Kyle Pitts? On the Atlanta Falcons, Drake London, Michael Pruitt, and Olamide Zaccheaus.
I'll pay somebody $10 right now if you can tell me what team Michael Pruitt plays for.
This year?
Yeah.
The Falcons.
Okay, well, not you, but
he was on the Falcons.
No, I know, but I was going to see if Grant got it. Come on, man.
Oh, no, no.
Do you know where he went to college?
No.
Southern Illinois.
Oh.
Michael Pruitt, Southern Illinois. By the way, from Kirkwood. Congratulations to Michael Pruitt for going out there and performing better than Kyle Pitts last year. I'm going to say I'm believing it. I'm a sucker for Kyle Pitts.
Can't get worse.
I just can't quit him, dude. He's so unbelievably talented. So I gave you all the numbers as to why he won't go out there and do it, because he was horrible. If you drafted him last year, you hated your life because you hated it because you had to put him in the fantasy tight end spot every single week, and every week he disappointed.
And every week you were like, he can't be as bad as he was last week.
You know
but
how
I'm
hard?
going to believe it. I think he's going to be all right this year.
You know how hard I tried to trade him last season?
Everyone else saw the tea leaves on that one. I just think they're going to run the ball more. And if they're not running, I think the pass game, Bijan Robinson plays into that also.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Believe It or Not. Guys, believe it or not, T-Bone has become a star and a diva after this week spending it on the fast lane.
Absolutely. He couldn't podcast yesterday because he had to rest his voice. Today, he could only sing and then rest his voice. He's become a star, but he's become a diva.
Did you see him walk out of the studio after that Believe It or Not open?
Thank you, St. Louis!
Yeah, he's acting. Oh God, unbelievable. You know where I think it started? I think it started in Nashville. He had the opportunity to one-on-one with Doug Armstrong, and he crushed that. And I think that's where the head imploded. The head turned into the house and up. It just kept floating, and it never came back down.
I'm going to say not believing it. I think he's become a star. I don't think he's a diva. Not yet. Give it another day. We'll see what he looks like tomorrow.
He's at
when
a
he
different
comes in here.
diva level of you, though. Like, you're at the upper echelon of that diva.
Oh, you think
and then
so,
he's like
guy?
right in the middle.
I'm
not a devil. I'm always grounded.
9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Believe it or not, BK finishes last in the Fantasy Football League at 101 ESPN this year. Not believing it. I'm decent at fantasy football.
Oh, no, I'll believe this one because he's going to actually add more time to the clock of drafting, and that's going to affect him.
BK, I imagine you being the fantasy player that has like a book of Excel spreadsheets on every single player.
He does a book of Excel sheets for one segment on our show.
Yeah, we'll get into that coming up in about 5 minutes or so. I've got a spreadsheet ready
Every
to go
tweet, there's at least one tweet you can bank on it every single night that is going to have an Excel sheet of, and the headline of it is going to say, "I did a deep dive tonight."
Do you, when you're doing your fantasy draft, how many like tabs do you have open of information?
Just one. I use a website called Establish the Run, and free plug for them.
I use the same one, and it doesn't benefit me.
Adam Levitan and Evan Silva, they do really, really fantastic work. So that's what I use for both my redraft leagues, and I'm a big daily fantasy player during the regular season. Underdog helps me out. Fantasy football over on DraftKings, they help me out with all
us out, and it just you benefited from what we did
had a big
together.
win in the Super Bowl, and I enjoyed that a lot.
You kept all that money.
Believe it or not, guys, João Klaus will start a game for City at some point this year.
I'm going to have to believe this one because I see all the videos surfacing of him out practicing with the team. You can't be out the rest of the season, right? I say that, and he's been out for how long? Like 25 weeks or something like that?
What's going on?
He looks great on the video, so.
Well, the crazy thing is at one point you saw things saying that he was close to returning, and then all of a sudden it was a setback, and I mean, you just never know with this guy.
I don't understand what's going on. I'm going to have to say believe it. At some point, I think he's going to come back, but man, we all got so excited about what this guy could be for St. Louis, and they said, hey, he's finally found a home. He feels like he belongs here. Then he had a quad injury. That's what they called it. And he's been out since like May? April?
You saying he's dogging it?
No, not at all. But man, that is a long time for any injury, much less a quad injury. So I hope we get to see him at some point.
Maybe he's just pulling a Mark Stone and he'll be back right before playoffs.
Smart. Believe it or not, BK is the guy you want in your group projects in class.
Oh, for sure.
I feel like, yeah, you get a lot of information.
Absolutely. He comes in with a manila folder of like, hey, guys, I did all of this work overnight, and you can use it if you want.
And the folder's like busting at the seams.
Alex definitely would have used me in high school.
Dude, I would do the work. I hated giving presentations in school. Like, I hated it. I would do all the work and be like, hey, could somebody just present this for me?
That's like when we go to, Grant, we went to Westport Social, and we had basically a remote, but it was like after the show.
It was an appearance, basically.
An appearance. Went out there, hung out, made some drinks, and basically just talked with people, right? We're hanging out there.
And talk to people. They wanted us to walk around and hand them stuff to fill out. And it's like, this is so uncomfortable. There's nothing worse than going up and interrupting somebody's good time by saying, hey, will you fill this out?
I don't have any issues with it. It is what it is, right? Everybody knows what the deal is. We'd walk around. Alex like, hey, you got this? I said, yeah, I'll get this taken care of for you.
I'm the guy that puts headphones on at a grocery store. Do you think I'm going to go interrupt somebody in the middle of them enjoying a beer by saying, hey, will you fill this out? Hey, will you fill this out? No, get out of here.
That's something I could not do. And I think about the people that work for the Wi-Fi companies or whatever at Walmart that like sit there and talk to people. I'm like, no shot.
It has nothing to do with me being uncomfortable talking to people. And it has everything to do with me feeling uncomfortable interrupting somebody else's time. Because if I'm that person,
want somebody to interrupt you.
I get upset about it. And so I'm thinking, oh, but they're going to get upset about it.
Coming up next.
I care about people, Grant. Despite
we both do.
Despite what BK believes, I care about people.
I went scuba diving last night. Oh. We had a deep dive.
In your bathtub?
In the BK household.
Oh, Luke has already got the Excel sheet out.
And I came away with two conclusions on the pitchers that the Cardinals should be targeting this offseason. I'll tell you what I found in my scuba segment next here on 101 ESPN.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. Last night, the Cardinals fell 8-0 in the series finale to the Athletics. Tonight, they'll start a 4-game set against the New York Mets. Jose Quintana, the former Cardinal, who's got a 3.03 ERA this season, will start for the Mets. And for the Cardinals, it'll be Adam Wainwright. First pitch will be at 6:15. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been driven by Johnny Londoff. Find new roads and shop 24/7 at londoff.com and LondoffAutoplex.com. Are you kidding me?
Alex, me and Michael Gersh went scuba diving last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Did Mo offer you the snorkel gear, though?
No, the muddy Mississippi. We don't just go snorkeling in there. We go scuba all the way down to the very bottom.
If you're listening, don't Google muddy Mississippi.
Alongside Alex Ferrario and Grant Francis, I'm Brandon Kiley. So
Thanks, Grant.
Our idea for the Cardinals this offseason is enough of the snorkeling.
Yeah.
It's time to scuba.
Yep.
And we're not talking about the snuba either. Nope, full-blown scuba diving.
You get a damn tank. You put the entire outfit with a wetsuit on, even the flippers.
And obviously what we mean by that is going deep into the free agency market. Go dive into the deep end, guys. It's time to go Blake Snell, Julio Urias, Aaron Nola. That level of starter, that's who you should be trying to acquire this offseason. So, Alex, last night, I did a deep dive into this upcoming free agent class, and I looked at the last 3 years of what each of these guys did. I looked at, you know how we tier these guys out, the tier 2, 3, and 4. Really, I kind of focused on tier 2 and 3. So that's the guys that I just mentioned, Snell, Urias, Nola. They're the tier 2 free agents, right? Not named Shohei Ohtani, basically. And then the other guys that are into this conversation are Stroman, Flaherty, Eduardo Rodriguez, Jordan Montgomery, Lucas Giolito. Solid 3s, Sonny Gray throw into that mix as well. Solid 3s, maybe you could argue 2s in a good season for them, but they're guys that aren't going to be at the front end of your rotation. So I looked at what all of these guys have done when it comes to games started, innings, ERA, fielding independent pitching, strikeout rates, batting average allowed, and then I even dove into some of the real deep dive stuff. Eno Saris comes up with the numbers for a stat called Stuff Plus. To simplify it, basically, how good is your stuff? It's on a scale of 100, kind of like OPS plus, those sorts of things. Anything above that is that percentage above average. He also has location plus, so can you locate your pitches? Yes or no? Anything above 100 is pretty good. And then he's got a pitching plus, which is some combination of stuff plus and location plus. How good of a pitcher are you? And he tries to put that into a numerical tabular data. And then I looked at their average velocity as well. So, whole bunch of numbers.
I feel smarter already hearing this.
I've got it all into a spreadsheet ready to go for you. I had 2 main takeaways from my deep dive last night, Alex.
Okay.
Takeaway number 1, I think you're going to like this one.
Tell me.
Every single number that you can find indicates there should be one obvious candidate for the Cardinals to sign this offseason.
Let's all say it together.
Aaron Nola. He is the most consistent pitcher on this list. He has pitched 534 innings over the past 3 seasons. The second best number among this group of free agent pitchers is Lucas Giolito with 480. 50 more innings over the last 3 years Aaron Nola has pitched than any other starter on this list. He is incredibly consistent. If you look at the underlying numbers, strikeout rate, fielding independent pitching, walk rate, all of that stuff, even Stuff Plus rates him very well. Stuff's still there. All of it suggests, hey, he's been pretty unlucky. He's got a bad defense behind him. He plays at a hitter-friendly park. This stuff could get better if he goes somewhere else where you've maybe got a little better of a defense and a better pitcher-friendly park, all of which would apply to the St. Louis Cardinals. The number 1 free agent target for the Cardinals this offseason should be Aaron Nola in my mind.
Absolutely. And it's not so much of him having the best stuff, although your deep dive proves otherwise. It's more just about the feel of the type of pitcher he is. And you need a legit number one. And although Blake Snell and Julio Urias might profile more to a lot of people without diving into the numbers as, oh, well, they're better pitchers. They're the clear number ones. Aaron Nola has been a consistent number one throughout his entire career. And what I know I'm getting from Aaron Nola is 180 to 200 innings, a guy who's going to have somewhere between a high 3, mid 2 ERA, and somebody who is going to give you 7 innings plus almost every single night. And to me, maybe the stuff dips off. Maybe you're paying him more for past than present. But as we've talked a lot about, you did this to yourself. And I know a lot of people ask the question, well, then how are you going to get him? Why would the Phillies let this type of player go? I was watching because Nola pitched last night, and it didn't go well for him. And our guy from Philadelphia, Sam Filippo, who was the one that joined us during the offseason with the Flyers news, he was talking about how inconsistent Nola has been this season, and he said, it sure seems like Philadelphia Phillies fans are done with him, mostly because you can't rely upon him. And he said, I fully expect him to go out and pitch like a Cy Young next season when he doesn't re-sign in Philadelphia. But for now, it's pretty evident that this team is done with him. And I do believe the Phillies are going to look at this and say, well, he's 30 years old, 31, not going to pay him the amount of money. We'll let him walk. And I think that's a perfect opportunity for the Cardinals to pounce. Maybe you only get 3 good years out of him, but that's a win in my opinion.
And part of why they would let him walk, for those curious, is they don't want to pay an aging pitcher big-time money because they're not desperate. The Phillies aren't desperate. That's the truth of the matter. They have Zach Wheeler under contract for the next couple of seasons. He's a number one. You have a guy like Ranger Suarez, who's been a really solid, like, number 3, 4 starter for them. Taijuan Walker has been a solid free agent acquisition, and they have some legit top-tier talent in their system that's coming up right now that they could put into the back end of that rotation. They're a team that's always going to be willing to trade prospects at the deadline if they need a number 2 starter going into a playoff setting. So I think all of that plays into maybe they believe they can get by with Zach Wheeler at the front end of their rotation, Ranger Suarez and Taijuan Walker, and then maybe one of these other guys, a Sonny Gray, Stroman, Flaherty, Eduardo Rodriguez. Maybe they want to shop in that range as opposed to going out and getting a quote-unquote number 1 in Aaron Nola like the Cardinals need to go out there and acquire. So number 1 for me, go out there and get the guy in this offseason. The guy should be Aaron Nola. And he's going to have a lot of bidders, but that's the guy that I would be going out there and getting. Number 2, this is somebody that we've talked a lot about. If you're looking to that second-tier market, if you've already signed Aaron Nola and you say, okay, now what? What do we do next? Because they need 3 starters this offseason. They've said that publicly. The next guy that I would be targeting is Sonny Gray. When you look at Sonny Gray's numbers, Alex, and you compare it to every other second-tier option, he stands a cut above. It's almost as if there's actually 3 tiers within this 2-tier system. So you go Snell, Urias, Nola. That's the top category of pitcher in the market. And then there should be a second tier where it's just Sonny Gray, because he is better in terms of the rate statistics, ERA, fielding independent pitching, strikeout rate, all of these different things, batting average against, than every other guy, Stroman, Flaherty, Rodriguez, Montgomery, Giolito, Paxton, Maeda. Sonny Gray has been better than them over the past 3 seasons. So my ideal path for the Cardinals this offseason, start out by going and making an aggressive offer to get Aaron Nola to lead the front end of your rotation. Then go out and make an aggressive offer for Sonny Gray to be your number 2 starter going into next season. And if Sonny Gray says no, or if they decide, you know what, we're not willing to get to sign somebody that is the QO attached to him, then your transition is actually to the 2 Japanese pitchers.
Yeah, Yamamoto or Imanaga.
Those are the 2 guys that I would have as my background options. I would say Nola is 1, and then either Sonny Gray or the 2 pitchers coming over for Japan should be your tier 2 options.
Yeah, and that's a A-plus offseason in my opinion. And look, Nola might flop and it might not work out for you, and you're relying upon Sonny Gray or one of these pitchers in Japan to be that top player until Nola gets right. Don't care. You had to push all your chips into the middle on one of those tier 2 guys. And again, let's all be honest. Julio Urias is not going to be a Cardinals option. And to me, I would take the opportunity with Nola in hopes that it doesn't collapse right away over a Blake Snell, that when it collapses, you're talking about a guy who becomes a bullpen arm. Like, even if Nola falls apart, we're talking about a guy who could be a 4 or a 5 for you, which sucks to pay him $30 million. But again, you put yourself into this position. But at least for the next few years, I know I'm going to be competitive with Nola. And then that third tier of Sonny Gray and then one of those pitchers from Japan, that's the scuba diving rather than the snorkeling, saying, well, I don't want to go that high. Let's go a little bit lower in James Paxton.
So somebody on the text line said, guys, Sonny Gray is 33 years old and has a history of September declines. Yeah. Every one of these guys, you can say, yeah, but. Every single one of them.
It's a pitcher.
Marcus Stroman has a serious injury that he's dealing with right now. I'm not even sure he's going to opt out of that contract because of this. He's had a serious second-half decline. And by the way, guys, I'm just going to be totally honest. I would be shocked if the Cardinals go that route. Last time he was a free agent, I was told not going to be a Cardinal. Jack Flaherty, you're not going down that path again. Eduardo Rodriguez was MIA for half of the season last year. Jordan Montgomery, the Cardinals had him here and decided, nope, we'd rather move on. We have picked Miles Michaelis over Jordan Montgomery. Lucas Giolito, if you look at any number you want to, man, he's basically Jack Flaherty, but a little bit worse. So do you really want to sign that guy? I don't know. James Paxton, Kenta Maeda both have serious injury questions over the past few seasons, and both are more 4 starters than they are 2 or 3 starters. So we can play this game with everybody. That is a free agent this offseason. That's why they're hitting free agency, because their team's deemed to not re-sign them long term. These guys all come with some warts. The ones that have the fewest, the ones that are the quote-unquote surest bets, which means it's like a 70% chance that it works out as opposed to a 50, Aaron Nola, Sonny Gray. So the two guys at the top of the market that if I was in charge of the Cardinals, if I had the Mo bow tie on today, those would be my top 2 names that are on my list, and I would have them circled, starred, put into pin, highlighted. Those are the guys that I need to go out there and acquire going into the 2023 offseason. Coming up next, we'll hit the rewind here on 101 ESPN. Hey, Matt Holliday's going to join Jamie Rivers and the one, the only,
the diva,
the superstar that is on the fast lane today, Tanner Hendrickson. That's coming up in about 5 minutes or so. So stay tuned for that at the top of the hour as the fast lane comes your way from 2 to 6. But we finished today's show by discussing what really are the tale of two different pitchers right now. Matthew Liberatore and Adam Wainwright. Matthew Liberatore recapping what we saw last night, and of course Waino previewing what we'll see tonight. Alex, it was a no good, very bad start for Matthew Liberatore. There's no other way to describe it. My firm stance, though, is it changes very little in how I view him. This is the same stance that I had after his last outing. I'm staying towards the middle with Libby right now. I want to be able to look back at his last 10 starts by the end of the season and say, okay, now we have a pretty firm grasp on where he's at currently. Doesn't mean he shouldn't be a part of your rotation or he's pinned into your rotation next year either way, but this is why you give him this opportunity. Is to find out, all right, what's the consistency level here? Because that's the last thing to get there whenever you're a young player. And last night was bad. The time before that was the best outing he's had in his major league career. Now he needs to go out and learn from what went wrong last night. What went wrong is very obvious. Didn't have velo later in the outing, and he couldn't land his curveball for strikes. If you get those two things from Matthew Liberatore, you're going to put yourself in a good situation to succeed.
Yeah, it doesn't change anything for me either. I want to see him every fifth day for the rest of the season so I can see if Matthew Liberatore is able to fix the issues with his previous start. And if he does, then you're back into the plans. And you're not changing from those plans. It's just a matter of depth chart right now. And I've seen more consistency in recent starts than from Dakota Hudson and the short sample size we've gotten from Zach Thompson. And this was just kind of a yellow light for me with Matthew Liberatore of saying, okay, still a little concerned about who he is as a pitcher, but it's not changing anything for me in terms of I expect him out there every fifth day.
And on the Waino side of things, he goes out there tonight. It's a nationally televised game on Fox. Man, I hope like hell he's able to go out there, and I hope he picks up win number 199, goes 5-6 innings, gives up 2-3 earned runs, and we all look back on this and say it's ridiculous that we ever had the conversation of taking him out of the rotation. But it's something we got to have. He's got an 8.80 ERA. It's one of the worst we've ever seen in the history of Major League Baseball. If things go awry tonight, Alex, I do think there is a very real chance that this ends up being the last time that we see Waino start a game for the Cardinals at Busch Stadium. Where do you fall?
I'm not there. I think you'll see at least one more from him, and I believe if it goes real poorly, it'll be that last game of the season. But I do think that the finale of Waino's career could be in jeopardy in terms of a guy in the rotation by tonight. He's done this before, though. That start that he had against the Diamondbacks after that 19 days off with the IL stint, he came out and he pitched well for him. He's pitched well in the past. It's just a matter of you not having the bullpen session. Did that benefit you and provide you your best stuff?
The Three Amigos will be back tomorrow with Tanner Hendrickson back in the saddle. Grant Francis did a great job today filling in for T-Bone. The superstar will be coming up here in just a few minutes on the Fast Lane. For Alex and Grant, I'm BK. Go to the 101ESPN.com or the free 101 ESPN app. You could find the full podcast there. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
Talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 on 101 ESPN.